The boy tells himself that this time he won't fail, until he takes a step forward and feels something strange. From the back of the room, a flash pops and an arrow rushes out, completely destroying his leg. He collapses in agony with his foot mangled, and when he looks down, he sees he won't be able to play football. Right away, he plants his sword in the ground and says he needs to get back to the lobby, but he ends up collapsing again. At least he gains pain tolerance level 1. But he wants to know what happens if he dies there. He couldn't allow something like that to happen. When the system gave him the option to choose the difficulty, he shouldn't have selected hell. Now he's there dragging himself across the floor. At least he gained tolerance level 2 and hemorrhage resistance. He wonders if this is the end, but in the blink of an eye, the scene shifts completely to the day he was drinking. Let's just say this boy here was a mini faker. He played professionally for countless years until he decided to retire. Life had completely lost its appeal without competition. That's when suddenly that window invited him to the tutorial. It presented all the difficulties and, being an ex-pro, he ended up choosing hell. Someone then tells him to open his eyes, and when he does, he finds himself in a white room surrounded by strange people. He asks who they are, backs away, and looking around he sees a bunch of pillars. One of the guys says that this is the first floor of the tutorial, and the kid doesn't get it. In the background, by one of the pillars, he sees a really cute girl, until the older guy warns that they're just as confused as he is and asks him to explain something. The protagonist just says he saw on the news that strange holes were appearing all over the world, but the Walmart M&M is there telling him to stop making up stories. Until suddenly the window appears to them saying they should choose a weapon. Once again he's transported, now to a hall full of items on the walls. The boy starts walking and sees that this looked like a starting item selection. He had to be careful because this would decide his future forever. He knows that in this type of game you have classes like the tank, the healer, and the DPS. He has no idea how to use magic, and heavy weapons don't suit his body either, so those are ruled out. A bow is interesting, but you always end up depending on someone else to defend you. But without knowing how the game would work, that was still dangerous, especially since he chose hell difficulty. Considering all of this, sword and shield is the only item that lets him protect himself from a distance and still face creatures up close. Obviously the level 1 items were trash, but with no other real option he tells the system that he accepts. With that, he's back in the room. The older guy asks what he chose and says he's going to explain some things, but Eminem cuts him off and tells the old man that's enough. He was already bursting with rage from waiting so long. The guy is already trying to pick a fight, saying he's going to test out his weapon on him. But soon the big guy pushes him away, and with that teaches the protagonist how to open the inventory window. And that's when the poor sucker discovers a big problem. He has 8 strength and 21 magic power. It's more than clear that he chose the wrong weapon. On the community tab, he sees that the hell lobby only has 4 people total. And the older guy says that's exactly why they're going to have to get along. One thing the protagonist now knows, this is some kind of RPG. These guys are his team's allies, and maybe because of that he should try to get to know them. So he suddenly introduces himself, saying he likes games. The Walmart M&M gets excited about that, says he likes them too, and they start getting along for a second. The big guy is about to say something when the cute girl in the background calls out to all of them and introduces herself as Park Suha. The protagonist then says it would be good for them to know each other's weapons so they can build a strategy. The older guy chose a trident, Eminem a heavy axe, which our boy already knows is a problem since it's all short-range weapons so far. And when he turns around begging that Park chose a bow or a staff, she pulls out a katana, all full of swag. Clearly the team was massively unbalanced. With no other choice though, they decide to start practicing and prepare. After a few hours, the protagonist realizes they don't feel hunger and their energy recovers quickly. The only question that remains is what happens when they die in there. He talks with Park, who praises the boy, saying he's a natural-born leader. But right after that, the time to enter the first dungeon had arrived. The portal to the tutorial opens, but it's 1 portal per person. In other words, everything they'd practiced until now wouldn't matter at all. And before they can decide anything else, their bodies begin to be transported into the portals. The poor protagonist tells everyone that he'll see them later, that he'll be waiting, but will he really see them again? The system welcomes him to the first floor of the tutorial. The boy is excited and says it's finally starting. What he doesn't know is that there's already something waiting for him there at the back of the room. When Ho looks back, he notices the portal is still there. Right in its center is a window asking if he wants to return to the lobby. So the protagonist chooses yes, and is instantly teleported back. The lobby is completely empty. That's when he realizes he can return any time to recover, which could save his life in an emergency. Out of nowhere, Park comes flying out of a portal and lands right on top of Ho, sending both of them to the floor. He quickly tells her the lobby still heals everything, and if they're ever about to die, they just need to run back through the portal. Blushing a little, she says the others need to know that too. After waiting a while, they still don't see the rest of the group return to the lobby. Worried, Ho checks the community tab to see if the number of players dropped, basically to find out if anyone died. The count is still the same. That gives them some relief, and the two head back into the tutorial through the portal. Before Park leaves, she asks MC for a favor. When they get back, she wants him to teach her how to play. He agrees. Then just before entering, she leans in close to his face, almost kissing him, and says that when they return, she wants to get to know him better. After that, Ho goes back into the tunnel and gets ready to move deeper into the tutorial. That same breeze hits him again, but this time he feels more confident. ready to fight whatever is out there. 30 minutes later, Ho is still standing in the same spot, wondering why nothing has happened yet. Then, while thinking about how his career was built on concentration, he suddenly gains two new passive skills: Battle Concentration Level 1 and Determination Level 1. Ho explains that in most RPGs, skills are either active or passive. Active skills have to be triggered by the user, while passive ones stay in effect all the time once you unlock them. So he realizes skills are created when certain conditions are met, and these two came from the situation he was in. He even considers telling the others later, but then he feels a huge pressure in the air, almost like an aura. He looks straight toward where it's coming from, and then suddenly something shoots at him like a flash of light and tears into his leg. The pain drops him to the ground, screaming. When he looks down, he sees his leg has been badly torn apart, so he decides to rush back to the lobby before it gets worse. Another attack slams into the ground beside him, and that's when he realizes those high-speed attacks are arrows. He barely dodges the next one, but it still slices his face. Then a whole rain of arrows comes down as his passive skills for pain tolerance and bleed resistance start leveling up. Dragging himself across the ground to survive, he gets hit in the back, opening a huge wound and making him cough up blood. With injuries all over his body, fear starts taking over, and the thought of dying wrecks his focus. Then he suddenly remembers the friends he made in the lobby. He rips the arrow from his back and with everything he has left forces himself forward, running for the lobby. The moment he crosses the portal, a message appears. You acquired Awakening Level 1. Once he's back, all his wounds regenerate. That alone brings some relief. Then he thinks about the others in his group, opens the community tab and freezes. Only one member is left. That means the other three are dead. As panic hits, he can't believe it and starts breaking down over what happened. He realizes Choi and Joe probably never learned they could return to the lobby to recover, and Park likely couldn't escape the arrow trap in such a tight space with her huge sword. Ho cries over losing all of them. Sometime later, he opens his status window and notices every skill he gained so far is passive. A message suddenly appears. He has only 19 hours and 12 minutes left to clear the first floor. With grief still weighing on him, he gets up and vows to finish the tutorial. Then he steps back through the portal. Right away, he drops into a fighting stance. He steadies himself and focuses on every clue around him. Then a flash appears at the end of the hall and shoots straight at him. He dodges and realizes the arrow was aimed at his right ankle. That confirms it. The first shot always targets the same spot, so the arrow trap has a clear pattern. The second shot goes for his chest, but his shield barely stops it. The third one flies right at his forehead, and he narrowly avoids it. Another attack rushes in right after that. He tries blocking again, but the impact shatters his shield. Then another arrow hits his leg, making him think about retreating to the lobby again. But one more arrow pierces his shoulder, and another slams into his chest. A shot aimed at his head barely misses as he slips away, and he collapses, almost out of strength. Just before fully going down, a level-up window appears. His wounds heal and his gear is restored. He gets no time to think. Another arrow comes at him and he knocks it aside with his sword until the attacks stop for a brief second. That opening lets him check his status window and confirm he reached level 1. Now he decides to farm more XP so he can level up again and keep getting stronger. The new plan fires him up. Then a strange message appears behind him saying the god of adventure has taken interest in him. Sometime later, as he pushes deeper into the tunnel, dodging and blocking arrow after arrow, he starts using the active skills he unlocked, which finally helps him get through the door. The moment he passes it, he finds 2 more traps aimed to hit anyone crossing that path. Even so, his speed and agility let him avoid them cleanly. He keeps moving, blocks more shots with his sword, and presses on with growing confidence. After clearing one phase, he checks his status and notes that he gained new skills and raised his level through all those near-death moments. He also notices a message in the status bar and wonders who this god of adventure really is. He remembers that a few days earlier, the community board revealed each floor has a 30-day limit, and everyone already knows there's a punishment for failing it. After that, he gets ready to move on to the next stage ahead, hidden in total darkness. Then all of a sudden, while he runs, arrows start firing from all sides and angles. He bats some away with his sword and blocks others with his shield, until one strikes his leg. Even after getting hit, he smiles because his pain tolerance is already level 8. To him, it barely hurts, so he keeps pushing forward until he spots the exit. An arrow hits him in the back, but he still manages to reach the way out. Badly injured, he notices something strange in the middle of the room, but because of his wounds, he blacks out before he can react. After some time, he wakes up and realizes he's inside what seems to be a fountain that healed all his injuries. Then he sees a red door ahead. It looks like the boss room. Not wasting another second, he accepts the challenge of the final stage. As soon as the door opens, the place feels like a ruin with lava all around. At the far end, he spots a crossbow-like beast aimed right at him, and it fires at once. He dodges, worried but already thinking of a way to beat it. He rushes ahead through the rubble, guarding himself from the incoming arrows the whole time. Then, out of nowhere, 2 flaming arrows hit him in the back. Another shot follows and breaks his shield. He drops to his knees, taking damage from both the arrow and the flames. In that moment, he sees his fallen teammates in his mind, and that pushes him even harder. A flashback hits him. He used to live just to play video games, not out of boredom but because he truly loved playing. It was the only thing he felt proud of, and when that was gone, he felt empty. But now things are different. He's in pain, exhausted, and heartbroken over his friends. Yet he doesn't feel empty. Before he gave up when he realized he wasn't the best anymore. This time, he refuses to make that same mistake. Surrounded by fire, he tears off his shirt to stop the flames and charges the final boss with fierce determination. He slips past every attack until he gets close enough to land the finishing blow. He's badly hurt, but happy to clear the first floor on infernal difficulty. He mourns being the only survivor, thanks his fallen teammates, and with tears in his eyes, says, "First floor cleared." Just like we saw in the last video, the protagonist defeats the first floor's final boss. That earns him a huge amount of experience along with a few other rewards. Soon after, a new portal opens beside him, and he wonders if it leads to the second floor or to another lobby. Even with those doubts and no real choice, he walks into the portal. Once he's teleported, he appears in what looks like a huge field. As he wonders where he is, he notices someone in the distance. Looking closer, he realizes that figure looks a lot like a rabbit. Then suddenly, the person turns around and introduces herself in a cute voice. Her name is Kiri. Completely confused, he introduces himself too, while wondering if she's an enemy, a player, or an NPC. After that, she keeps repeating his name over and over, almost like she's singing it. Then she turns and says she's the one in charge of taking care of him, calling herself the manager of infernal difficulty. She adds that every difficulty has its own manager. She also says he can talk to her whenever he clears another floor. Then she congratulates him for beating the first floor, and tells him he can now use new windows, like the shop and auction. She explains that the auction window only works in lobbies or residential areas. Then she says he can use the shop right now, and asks if he wants to try it. He opens the shop window and is shocked by how many items and pieces of gear are available. Now he starts thinking about what to buy. Out of nowhere, the rabbit girl gets way too familiar with him and starts butting in about what does or doesn't suit him. Time passes, and now he's dressed in the outfit he picked for himself. Meanwhile, the rabbit girl stares at him like she's thinking, "What is this mess? Seriously, what a disaster." Then he asks Kiri what happens if someone fails to clear the first floor within 30 days. She says they get sent back to the lobby, and all the food and water in their inventory disappears. That's why earning points to buy supplies from the shop is so important. She also explains that the lobby has a 24-hour stay limit. After that, you're forced to leave it. He asks what happens when you're kicked out of the lobby, and she says she can't tell him. Kiri explains that her job is to guide the people who arrive there, but there's a limit to what she's allowed to say. Naturally, he complains, pointing out that she was just telling him what items to buy. She quickly shoots back that she was only explaining the items, and that part is allowed. Then she says she can answer just one more question, but asks him not to ask anything yet because she has something important to tell him. She urges him to buy as many recovery potions as possible. Right away, he starts to figure out what the second floor might be about. Based on her warning, he guesses it will involve status effects. Then he uses his final question. What happens to people who die in this game? Even without a direct answer, he seems to understand something. A moment later, he stands up and thanks her, saying goodbye as he gets ready to leave that hall. A portal opens, and just before he steps in, the rabbit girl calls out his name and wishes him luck, begging him not to die. Finding her kind of funny, he heads for the portal and says he'll see her again soon. And the moment he enters it, a message appears telling him the floor number and how much time he has to clear it. Then another prompt asks if he wants to enter the stage. He wonders if this stage is the second floor, then thinks that if he clears 2 or more floors in one run, he might get bonus rewards, and starts wondering if it's worth trying. But he quickly backs off that idea, remembering the beating he took before, and decides to be more careful so he doesn't die. Then he notices something very interesting. There's actually a bed in this hall, a real bed, and overjoyed he throws himself onto it to finally get some rest. He tells himself he'll just take a quick nap, but then he suddenly wakes up and realizes he slept for 12 hours. Even he admits he's never slept that long in his life. A little later, he starts wondering what has changed since he entered this game. He thinks back on his past and says those memories already feel far away. In this place, it feels like he's gone back to his pro gamer days, when he trained like crazy for every match and bet everything on each challenge. Now he's back in a game again, only this time the risk is real. He quickly says standing still won't help, then opens his status window and notices he got a new active skill, Battle Concentration. He remembers it used to be passive and wonders if clearing the first floor changed it, so he starts training with that skill right away. After a while, he's left collapsed on the floor, exhausted. At this point, he can only keep the skill active for about 5 minutes, and if he pushes past that, he might pass out from mental strain. Next, he opens the auction window, a place where anyone who's cleared the first floor can buy and sell items, no matter the difficulty. He notices most of the listings are just starter weapons. Then he pauses and considers doing what he did before, using the last 3 days to improve his skills even more. After that, he opens the community window. As he looks through it, he spots one small detail that instantly shocks him. The number of players on Hell difficulty has gone up. A moment later, he checks the community chat and sees people talking about the new players who picked Hell mode. There are 5 of them, he says. He figures they're probably confused and have no idea what's going on, and leaving them like that worries him, so he decides to share what he knows somehow. Then, all of a sudden, they enter the Hell mode chat. Seeing that, our protagonist gets ready to type out everything he's learned so far. But right after that, all of them leave the chat, which makes him really nervous. Even so, he posts the information anyway and hopes they read it, because they can't afford to underestimate this tutorial. He grabs his sword and tries to stab himself with it, since his resistance grows when he takes damage. But the blade can't even leave a scratch. That makes him realize farming experience in the lobby is pointless. Suddenly, a portal appears in front of him, signaling the start of the 2nd floor. He gathers his gear and inventory, then heads straight for the portal. The moment he steps through, he realizes it's the same tunnel as the 1st floor. Then, without warning, 3 arrows fly at him. He reacts at once, swinging his sword to knock them away and slice through all 3, saying the arrows are easy to read. He moves deeper into the tunnel until he starts hearing a different sound. Then another projectile shoots at him, much faster than before, catching him off guard and forcing him to raise his shield to block, but the impact shatters it. Another projectile hits his leg, and he realizes they're poison needles. A second later, dizziness kicks in, and his vision starts to blur. Feeling sick, he covers his mouth, then opens his inventory and pulls out an antidote potion. For a moment, he stops to think about trying something risky, taking more hits until he gets close to the limit. Then he explains that he has a special ability only he can use, an instinct that tells him how close he is to death. It measures that danger like crossing the river Styx. In other words, if he reaches the other side, he's dead for real. Still, he checks his current condition and sees he's only barely stepped into the river, so he puts the antidote away for later. He pulls a strap from his inventory and ties up his poison leg to slow the venom from spreading too fast. Then a window appears saying he learned poison resistance level 1. He gets back up and notices there are a few poison needles on the ground, so he picks them up in case they help later. But suddenly the poison hits him much harder, and he decides to retreat to the lobby portal. Weakened by the venom, he struggles toward the portal, then stops and wonders if he should endure it as long as he can. He starts using his death sense ability with the river's depth as a guide, and soon he begins sinking fast. That makes him dash for the portal before it's too late. As soon as he crosses back, all his wounds and status effects are instantly healed. Then another message appears, saying he learned paralysis resistance level 1. Getting up, he decides to level the resistance skills he just gained by exposing himself to more damage. He returns to the tunnel and the attacks start again. This time, he dodges and blocks them as best he can. Then he rips one of the needles out of his shield and stabs his own hand with it to build up even more poison resistance. Drooling all over himself, he angrily complains about the game. He has to suffer like crazy just to level up. Then another needle suddenly fires at him and barely grazes his face, cutting part of his nose and cheek. Growing weaker and weaker, he finally uses the antidote potion while blocking the next wave of needles. That only pumps him up more. After some time, he reaches another chamber. The heat there keeps rising every second. He quickly pulls a bottle of water from his inventory and dumps it over his head to handle the intense heat. Right after that, 3 more shots come at him, but his shield stops them. Then he gains heat resistance level 1. He keeps moving through the chamber and takes out a freezing potion from his inventory, which gives him a blue aura and dulls the heat a little. Even so, he says it barely helped. Then a wave of heat crashes over him, forcing him to use a vitality potion. He reaches burn resistance level 2 and wonders if his skin is already burning. That moment of distraction gets him hit by several needles. He would have died right there if not for leveling up. Basically, every time he levels up, all his stats and equipment get restored. So he gets back on his feet and pushes toward the chamber's exit. A barrage of shots rushes at him, so he chooses to use his skill, Blessing of the Wind Spirit, activate. With all his stats boosted, he slips past every needle with incredible speed. Then out of nowhere, he trips over himself and slams face first into the ground, hitting his head against the wall near the exit. Bleeding. He groans about the pain and realizes he'll have to use his last option to heal. He's honestly scared he might die from something this dumb. A simple fall that left him with a head injury. The thought is humiliating. Then a message suddenly appears in his status bar. The god of adventure feels sorry for you. He instantly feels humiliated, thinking that this so-called god just watched him wipe out like an idiot. Then he's shocked to see a new skill appear in his status. Natural regeneration level 1. After that, he looks toward the next chamber and suspects it's freezing cold from the chill he can already feel. So he decides to head back to the lobby and prepare better. Second attempt, day 19, 6:30 in the morning. While eating, our protagonist thinks about how the chat has both good people and bad ones, just like the real world. And in his view, the bad ones usually outnumber the good. He says that because the chat is full of fake and harmful information. Then he spots a very interesting message from another player. It says that if they clear 100 floors, they'll earn the right to return to the real world. He says those words could give a lot of players hope, especially since nobody explained the real conditions for clearing the tutorial. Even so, just imagining 100 floors gives him chills. Still, he says he'll find out whether that information is true, as he keeps progressing. Sometime later, we find him getting ready for the ice chamber. He's wearing handmade gear while powerful blasts of freezing wind hit him. Even then, he doesn't flinch and activates battle concentration. He senses an incoming attack and ducks to avoid it. He pushes through the tunnel until, at one point, he finds what looks like a well very similar to the healing well from the first floor. That tells him the final boss room is just ahead. He studies the boss gate, then removes his cloak and gets ready to enter the last chamber. As soon as he steps inside, he's surprised by how huge the room is. Then all of a sudden, a window appears asking if he'd like to return to the lobby. That catches him off guard, especially because it shows up right now. So guys, just like where we left off last episode, our protagonist is standing in the second floor's boss room and seems uneasy because a return portal to the lobby is right in front of him. Then suddenly, another window appears with the clear condition: stay in that room for 3 hours and the countdown starts in 30 seconds. He's surprised by how easy the clear condition sounds compared to all the traps he already got through. Even so, he keeps eyeing the return portal and says he already collected everything he could from this floor, so there's no reason to go back. He chooses no. Right after that, a new message says the test is starting. He braces himself. Then another window pops up. It tells him to endure the most painful experiences of his life. At first, he doesn't get it. Then he's suddenly dragged somewhere else. It looks like he's being forced to relive his past, like time rewound. But as illusions, he's back on the first floor. At the exact moment his body was filled with arrows, and he nearly died. He quickly figures out how this room works. All he has to do is survive every illusion the game throws at him for 3 hours. Soon he's dropped into another illusion that looks like his old school. It's from his student days. This memory takes him to the moment when he confessed to the girl he liked most and got rejected. To him, that was the most humiliating moment of his life, and he complains that physical pain would have been better than this. That little reaction says a lot. He'd rather get hurt than deal with this kind of embarrassment. Then a message appears saying the god of adventure feels sorry for him, and he fires back right away. He still can't tell how much time is left. Before long, another illusion pulls him in. This time, he sees his past self staring at a monitor. On the screen, a pro gamer is being shown. That memory makes him furious. The player on the monitor is giving an interview, looking down on him and bragging that he's better. This happened back when Ho was still the top pro around. Then the memory shows that he lost to that same player and got overtaken. He lowers his head, crushed by it. A moment later, that player walks up to him and mockingly asks why he doesn't just retire already, even calling him an old man. That pushes him to his limit. Mentally drained, he drops to his knees and wonders when this will finally end. He even realizes not even 1 hour has passed since the illusions began. He says this won't kill him, but it really does feel like hell. Then another memory appears. Ho sits there with his head down while a woman stands beside him. She tells him their father died because of him. From that, we can guess she's his sister. Then we see him back in the hall, still unconscious while the illusions keep hitting him. This one hurts more than the others. The memory of his sister cuts so deep that by reflex he stabs his own body with his hands just to wake himself up. Once he comes to, he says this will drive him insane, and admits pain was the only way to break free. But he can't stop thinking about that last illusion. Was his father's death really his fault? Before he can process it, another illusion drags him in. Now he sees himself in a hospital room. An older man lies in the bed in front of him, and Ho realizes it's his father. He asks how he's feeling. His father stays quiet and tries to change the subject. Instead, he asks if this still isn't enough. The protagonist asks what he means. His father tells him to get a real job and asks if he plans to spend his whole life playing games. Then the argument continues. His father pushes again, saying Hobel has played enough and needs to think about his future. MC snaps back asking what his father knows about pro gaming and whether he understands how hard he worked. He demands to know if his father has any idea how hard he's fighting just to survive. Then his father quietly says, "Son," but Ho cuts him off, saying his father never even tries to understand him, and turns to leave. That's when his father asks if he even knows who's paying the hospital bills. He calls after him, telling him to wait. "It's me." His father begs him not to go. Then the scene cuts, and he wakes up in the hall again. In his head, he says he can't take any more. But the next illusion comes right away. His father is dead now, lying in a coffin. The woman beside him says she heard Ho yelled at his father in the hospital, even knowing about his heart condition. Once again, she blames him for everything. The protagonist just stares at his father, lost in thought. Then he starts sinking into his own mind, drowning in guilt and regretting that he never tried to understand him before being dragged even deeper into those memories. Suddenly, without thinking, he slashes his own arm with his sword. That pain finally wakes him from the illusion. He stays conscious for only a moment, before another illusion hits him. This time, he sees his sister and his father. Both of them stare at him with judgment, saying it was all his fault. Ho cuts his arm even deeper to wake up again. In his mind, he tells himself physical pain is easy to endure, and even if a memory drags him down, he'll stand back up. He shouts for them to bring everything they've got because he'll survive it all. Then a message appears, congratulating him for becoming the first person to conquer the final portal of the second floor. Relieved to be alive, he wonders what it means to be the first to clear it. Another message follows, saying the god of cold is curious about him, and then even more messages start flooding in. Other gods are interested in Ho too, like the gods of warriors, health, slowness, light, and devotion. In short, he's clearly moving in the right direction. He's shocked that there are this many gods, and then another message appears. This one is about his floor-clear rewards. Then a new message says the goddess of slowness wants to give him part of her power as a reward, and he gets the choice to accept or refuse. That makes him stop and think. It feels strange. Nothing like his normal skills, and he never expected this. In the end, he accepts. Another message appears. He obtained the max-level teleportation emblem. The goddess of slowness, who loves the patient and persistent, has gifted some of her power to a possible apprentice. Ho has no idea what that really means, and wonders if there's a normal explanation. Then one more message appears, saying the god of adventure is disappointed in him. Completely confused, MC insults the old geezer and decides to ask Kirikiri about the new skill. The scene shifts back to that field. A portal opens and Ho steps out of it. He's relieved to have made it back, but instantly gets slammed in the chin by a headbutt from the rabbit girl Kirikiri, while she welcomes him back. He asks what that was for. Smiling, she says it's been a long time, and she's happy to see him again. A little embarrassed, he agrees. Then he says he wants to show her something, and asks her to just watch. He opens the shop system and hits buy. A second later, he's holding a cake, which he gives to the rabbit girl. She lights up and starts shouting, asking if it's really for her. Ho thanks her for teaching him so much, and says she's helped a lot. But she's so focused on the cake that she barely hears a word, practically drooling over it. Jumping with joy, she calls him the best of the best. Some time passes. The two of them eat the cake together, and Ho asks if she has any tips for the third floor. Still cheerful, she says no. He's shocked. She gave him advice for the second floor, so why not this one? Kirikiri explains that she really has no useful tips this time. He's grown so fast that anything she says probably wouldn't help. He accepts that. Then just as he's about to ask about the other Hell difficulty players and whether they're still alive, she cuts him off, warning that one more question will use up the rest of his question limit. He gets it and changes the topic. Instead, he asks about his new skill, the teleportation emblem. She explains that it's one of the goddess of slowness's powers, and challengers who perform well on each floor can receive gifts from the gods. Ho wonders if that means the goddess of slowness likes him. Kirikiri says probably, since she only gets one chance to gift her power. That excites him, and he asks for more details. She tells him it'd be better to test the skill in the lobby. He agrees, then says he has one last question. What exactly are these gods? What do they want, and why are they watching the challengers? She looks at him with a serious face, then tells him to figure that out on his own. He says he understands, and in his mind he guesses the gods created this world and placed players inside it. With that, Ho says he's already cleared 2 out of 100 floors. He figures that once he reaches the top, he'll finally learn more about this world called the tutorial. Right before stepping through the portal, he turns back with one last question. He asks about the message from clearing the second floor, the one saying he had fully conquered the last portal, and wants to know what it meant. Kirikiri first calls it a system error. When he presses her for more, she shuts him down and says she can't explain. That sets him off with more questions: who the administrators are, whether clearing all 100 floors means he can go home, and if her rabbit ears are fake. In the end, Kirikiri gives him nothing useful, and he thinks she's no help at all. Then she suddenly calls him back. She hands him a new set of clothes. He's thrilled and asks if they're really for him. She says yes, and adds that they're way better than what he's wearing now. He turns to leave, says goodbye, and tells her she can have the rest of the cake. That makes her really happy. He even promises to buy her another one when he comes back. After that, he tells her he'll see her later. Then he steps into the portal to the 3rd floor while Kirikiri waves him off. The moment he reaches the 3rd floor lobby, he decides to check what his skills can do. So he opens his status window and looks at his new teleport skill, listed as a movement ability. He jokes that it's funny getting a movement skill from the goddess of slowness. Still, he knows skills like this are insanely useful. Thinking it'll come in handy, he decides to test it. He gets ready and activates the skill. One of his eyes turns black and energy starts crackling around him. Then he vanishes from his spot and reappears a few meters ahead. He's shocked by how far he moved in a single instant. As he starts figuring out the skill, he says that if a game had something like this, players would be furious and beg for it to get nerfed. After that, he tries doing 5 jumps in a row. The first works, but the second sends him into a bed, and he crashes face first into a pillar. He quickly realizes this skill is hard to control. Since one bad step already made him wipe out, he decides to check for obstacles before using it again. Some time passes, and he starts going through his supplies. He checks his potions, food, water, and now his weapons too. He picks a new sword and a set of armor, then decides to look over his skills one more time. When he opens the status window again, he's surprised. His Wind Spirit's blessing now shows new details. He sees it has reached stage 3 and realizes it can become one of his main abilities. With time left, he goes back to practicing his teleport control. Then something catches his eye. A message pops up on his panel. He first thinks it might be from another Hell difficulty player and opens it right away. Instead, it's an invitation to something called the Representative Confederation. He has no idea what that even is. Still, he selects the invitation. Another message appears, saying they'll explain what the Representative Confederation is, along with its goals and mission, and that they look forward to his reply. Signed by Li Shang-suk. He notes that the community has gotten a lot more active lately, though he didn't expect organized groups already. After all, he's still the only challenger in Hell difficulty. So he decides to answer later and focus on getting ready for the third floor. The scene shifts to him inside the third floor, facing what looks like a giant chessboard. He jumps down from his platform toward it. The instant his foot touches the ground, a projectile flies at him, and he dodges it right away. He guesses the attack's trigger whenever he steps on a black tile, so he aims for the next white tile and leaps onto it. As soon as he lands, he braces for something, but nothing happens. Even so, he feels something's off. It seems way too easy to test things further. He activates the skill that boosts his speed and agility, just to see if he can use it whenever he wants. Once it kicks in, he rushes across the white tiles. He looks pretty fired up when he spots the end of the stage and keeps moving. But on his next jump to a white tile, the second his foot hits the ground, arrows fire at him from every direction. Thanks to his fast reflexes, he uses teleport and slips past all of them, clearing the stage. He thinks it's cruel that the tutorial made him believe every white tile was safe, only to spring that trap at the very end. Still, he pushes on to the next area. He arrives at the regeneration fountain, the room before the boss hall where challengers can fully heal. Since he wasn't hurt, he heads straight for the boss gate. He gets ready and opens it, wanting to finish this quickly. The moment it opens, a bright light hits his face. Beyond it is a space filled with floating rock platforms. He says he's ready and calls out whatever's waiting to come fight him. Then the room's goal is revealed. To clear it, he has to reach the target. Floating platforms hang in the air, but they fall after a while, so he has to use them fast. Worse, the path is packed with traps. He immediately calls the whole room insane and says they're seriously trying to kill him now. If he falls, it's an instant death. Then the platform he had just been standing on drops away. He pulls out his shield and says this floor would be easy if falling platforms were the only problem. Then blocks an arrow and complains he can't even get a second to breathe. He has no clue where all these things are coming from. Suddenly his platform gives out, and he falls. He quickly activates Wind Spirit's blessing, and barely manages to jump to another platform. From there, he keeps leaping across the platforms, mixing teleport with Wind Spirit's blessing. Even with power from a god, he admits this is the hardest room so far. At one point, every platform starts dropping. He rushes forward, and from the last one, he jumps. While still in midair, he uses his teleport skill to try to reach the final platform. He barely makes it and grabs on. Right after that, the message appears announcing Midi Sano has cleared the third floor. He says he nearly died this time and grumbles that whoever designed this floor clearly wanted everyone dead. When he gets back up, he notices he's received rewards. He also sees that the god of adventure wants to share his power with him too. That annoys him since the god kept pestering him every day and only now decides to offer something. Even so, after thinking it over and remembering teleport basically saved his life, he accepts the gift. A message appears saying he obtained the skill Wings of Teleria at max level. He's stunned and wonders what kind of skill this is, so he opens the description. It says the god of adventure created a fragment of his own power for a challenger he finds especially interesting and that it was made for high speed. Then he opens his status window to inspect the new ability. Even if it's only a fragment, he figures a god's power is still a god's power, so it's probably going to be very useful. He decides to ask Kirikiri about the new skill and finds her almost at once. She's thrilled that the cake arrived and runs straight at him. He stops her with his foot and asks if he looks like a cake to her. Even so, a promise is a promise, and right then a sharp pain hits his head. Kirikiri asks if he's okay, then he loses consciousness and passes out. Sometime later, he wakes up and realizes all his exhaustion had piled up until he blacked out. That's when he notices Kirikiri is using him as a pillow. He looks over and sees that she's asleep. Because of that, he feels awkward about waking her. Instead, he touches one of her rabbit ears and comments that it's even softer than he expected. She instantly wakes up yelling, telling him not to stick his finger in her ears. She says the sound echoes way too loudly in her head, and he awkwardly apologizes. Then the scene cuts to the two of them eating what looks like pudding. He tells her the third floor felt really weird because the difficulty suddenly shot up. He truly thought he was done for this time. Kirikiri says that happened because he cleared the floor in a very strange way. He asks what she means by that. She explains that the third floor's boss room has a lower route, and that was the real path he was supposed to take. She adds that the gods probably never expected a challenger to clear it without falling. Hearing that, he thinks he can't wait to find out who made this messed up world, because he wants to beat them up. Some time passes. Kirikiri squishes her pudding while he checks the community again, but he says there's still nothing truly helpful there. The community talk is a mess. One guy acts like some smooth ladies man, then suddenly turns into a total simp. Something catches his eye. A group is talking about the Representative Confederation, and he learns other people got that invite too. He pauses to think, then wonders if that confederation only exists in the lobby. He also starts questioning what they really want. After entering the tutorial and clearing the first try, the free food and water are gone. From then on, challengers have to spend their own points. And once the 24-hour lobby limit ends, everyone gets kicked out. That leaves him wondering how those people keep staying there. He can't figure out how they maintain a group like that. The whole thing feels strange. For a second, he considers asking Kirikiri about it. Then he drops the idea. He won't waste his limited questions, and he can't meet people from other difficulty levels anyway, so he couldn't interfere with anything. In the end, he decides to focus on himself. Right after that, he asks Kirikiri what items he should bring to the 4th floor and wants some advice. She agrees and recommends rope, hooks, and a telescope. As far as she knows, that's all he needs. Then he asks her about the wings of Talaria. She looks shocked that he got another divine power and says he's amazing. Kirikiri explains that the skill summons Talaria's wings on the user's back. They let him glide, and the wings also have very strong magic defense. Then we cut to Kirikiri, watching him in the air as he tests the new skill. A second later, he pulls off the classic superhero landing. He thinks the skill is awesome and completely broken, while praising the god of adventure like crazy. Kirikiri reminds him, the wings only let him glide. They don't mean he can actually fly. He says that's already more than enough. What matters is how he uses it. If he combines it with his movement skill for a huge jump, he can glide much farther. Best of all, he thinks the wings look great on him, and he's clearly feeling himself. Then Kirikiri says that since he brought her such a tasty cake, she'll tell him something really important, a little bonus. She reaches out her arm and suddenly a portal opens. He stares at it confused, wondering if it's already time since it showed up too early. Kirikiri tells him the day of the great conference is coming soon. He asks what that is. She says he'll learn the true meaning of this world, and until then, he needs to do whatever it takes to survive. Then she shoves him toward the portal. He yells her name and tells her to wait. A moment later, he appears in the 4th floor lobby. He's still trying to figure out what she meant. Then the scene cuts to what looks like another lobby, packed with people. A man is casually playing with a knife, while another hangs from a pillar with a target drawn on his chest, begging for mercy. The man with the knife throws it at the target, and it sinks into the other man's shoulder. As the victim screams, the thrower laughs and says this place is useful, since wounds heal almost instantly. We're then introduced to him as Lee Chang-suk, the head of the Representative Confederation. In the next scene, the protagonist gets ready for the 4th floor. He focuses on training with the god's powers. It takes a lot of practice before he feels comfortable using both of them freely. Then the 4th floor message appears, asking if he wants to enter the stage. He decides to begin. When he enters, the floor feels similar to the earlier ones, especially the 1st and 2nd, just bigger and more open. He hears a loud crash echoing through the dark tunnel. In his head, he wonders if something real is finally showing up, something that isn't just another trap. That thought vanishes fast because right in front of him is a monster. It lets out a huge roar as he gets ready, realizing this is the first real monster he'll fight. And the game didn't hold back, it sent something huge and powerful. The monster swings its axe and he barely dodges. He immediately wonders how he's supposed to beat this thing. He complains that Kirikiri never warned him about needing different weapons, then figures he must be able to win with what he already has. He steadies himself and activates battle concentration. The monster charges him and attacks again, but he slips past it. In the next instant, he tries to counter using low guard, and just as his blade is about to land, he gets hit instead. The blow sends him flying. It hits so hard that he spits out a mouthful of blood. The monster is way faster than he expected. Then it rushes him again and moves in for the finishing blow. He raises his shield to block, but something feels off. The monster fakes with the axe, then smashes his shield with a brutal punch instead. The shield shatters instantly, leaving him with no way to stop the next attack. The axe. The monster leaps in to finish him, and right before the axe can hit, it gets kicked in the face out of nowhere as the protagonist jumps over it. After landing, he asks if the monster didn't see that one coming. He adds that it's his first time using the skill like this. With teleportation active, he says he's only used it to dodge until now. Only now does he realize it works for attacking too. The monster rushes him again in a rage, but he stays calm and decides to end it. First, he uses the Wind Spirit's blessing and lands a slash. As the monster turns, he's already on it again with teleportation, and in one instant he attacks hard enough to cut off its head. That victory leaves him thrilled. Sometime later, he's fighting another monster, or more like completely crushing them, including the one he just dropped. That makes 26. Then he wonders if he should take the next one on with just his fists, like he's starting to get a little too confident. He opens his status window and sees that his combat skills have improved a bit. Then thanks the goblins, he says this attempt should be over soon. The scene cuts back to the lobby. He's checking on his second attempt, which is almost over. Soon after, the third attempt begins. He quickly checks whether any new people joined his difficulty. Of course, his window still shows only him, because who would willingly choose a difficulty called Hell? Sometime later, something in the community catches his attention. The chat is a total mess because of the newcomers, so he decides to help them. He tells everyone to calm down and listen. This is the tutorial, a place completely separate from their old world. They can't go home right now, and one small mistake can get them killed, so they need to pay close attention. The newcomers are shocked by what he's saying, and one of them asks if this is hell. Another says yes, everyone around him got eaten by monsters. He tells them to stay calm, but what that person said sticks in his mind. Then someone else asks what he means by monsters. That question comes from a player on a different difficulty. The newcomers explain, and the protagonist is stunned. Everything finally clicks. Their homes, the real world itself, have turned into hell. The scene shifts to his world in total chaos. Portals have opened all over the planet, pouring out countless monsters. The military steps in, but it changes nothing, and thousands of innocent people are wiped out in moments. Soldiers and police try to hold the monsters back, but smaller countries don't have the resources or forces to respond, and many are destroyed later. Worse, the number of monsters never drops, and the military can't stop them all. 2 weeks after the portals first appeared, the death toll is already nearing 90 million. The number is insane. We cut back to the protagonist, horrified as he realizes his world may be reaching its end, and then he suddenly thinks of his sister and his mother. He tries talking to the newcomers again, but the chat is moving too fast with too many messages. He asks himself if this is really true, and fears for his mother and sister's lives. In full panic, he says he needs more information. Then he spots a message from a player asking if maybe they can still save them. Right away, the protagonist seems to realize something. He tells himself he can fight the monsters, and by the time he clears the final floor, he'll be far stronger. He says he was trapped in this world for no reason. No one explained the goal, the rules, or how to get out. Still, one thing is clear: the tutorial made him stronger. In other words, he says he'll have to save the world. About a month has passed in the real world since the portals appeared, and today is also the day of his third attempt in the tutorial. He says he finally understands this world's true purpose. After some time, our protagonist explains that everything changed the day the new players arrived in the tutorial and told everyone what was happening in the real world. From that point on, the players started thinking differently. From his point of view, more and more players began actively challenging the floors. Those with family in the real world were the most driven. Even if they weren't leading the raids, more people started helping each other, and he counts himself among them. Meanwhile, our protagonist seems to be reading the community tab while staying on one of the floors. The ground around him is covered with goblins he already took down. At the same time, he's standing there in a pretty cool pose. Then he suddenly notices something. A goblin behind him lets out an angry roar and charges straight at him. Our protagonist simply gets ready and turns, closing the gap with the goblin. The creature swings its axe, but he blocks it easily with his shield. The goblin is shocked and suddenly terrified of him. Then our protagonist slashes its shoulder with his sword. The goblin screams in pain, and a kick to its leg knocks it down. Before it even hits the ground, he smashes its chin with his shield, sending it flying through the air. He quickly grabs its head and twists, snapping its neck. He feels pretty awesome after that. Afterward, he says he's improved a lot. He also thinks 2 hours of sleep is enough in this world, since sleeping is completely optional. Even so, he knows he needs it to stay mentally stable, so he makes sure to keep sleep in his routine. Then he decides to open the community again. Our protagonist says the amount of information there has exploded, and everyone is doing their best to clear the floors. As more info came in, he learned things like this. The strength stat boosts more than just arm and leg power. Since it improves all the muscles in the body, raising it quickly is a smart move. Of course, some players disagreed, but since part of that information seemed true, he couldn't just ignore it, and it helped him deal with his difficulty too. Suddenly, our protagonist spots what look like smaller goblins hiding inside trenches. He immediately takes cover. Our protagonist watches carefully and realizes there are a lot of them. Then, out of nowhere, he uses his wings with a jump to soar over them. One of the goblins notices him, but it gets smashed by a huge sword strike right to the head. The goblin drops, screaming in pain, and the noise alerts all the others. A moment later, they all leap at our protagonist. He reacts fast and cuts down each one of them. He's growing at an incredible speed. Next, while a goblin archer aims at him, a thought rises in the back of his mind. The only ones who can save the real world, now turned into hell, are them. That's why he has to finish the tutorial. In his mind, there's only one goal: get stronger and faster. The scene shifts somewhere else and shows the so-called representative confederation again. Then some extra begs their leader to go easier on them, saying that if he takes even more of their supplies, before he can finish, he gets kicked right in the head. And the one who did it is the confederation leader himself. The leader says he took control of the first floor lobby in easy difficulty, and adds that the second floor isn't far off. While stepping on the man's head, he asks how a slave dared challenge a floor without permission. Then the crazy leader orders one of his subordinates to deal with everyone who joined the raid with the guy whose head he's crushing under his shoe. So the man's friends are brutally beaten in the lobby. They can't die there because they regenerate, but they still feel all the pain. In tears, the man begs him to stop crying the whole time. The leader only laughs, clearly enjoying it. He says this world is the best and soon his kingdom will be complete. And that's how this chapter ends, with these two who will probably meet in the future. Ha 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 ha. I'm going to kill you. Time passes and we return to our protagonist. He's cleaning one of his small blades, basically like a knife. At the same time, he admits he still can't get used to this. He says it's already been 10 days since he started hunting goblins. The goblins don't just dig trenches, they also use tactics. They set up wooden barriers, form defenses, and fight with all kinds of weapons, from staffs to crossbows and hooks. but since he can block arrows and magic with his wings, they aren't much of a threat. By staying in the air wrapped in his wings, he can fly toward them while keeping his guard up. Because of that, hunting them has become much easier. Still, his shield is in terrible shape. If he goes back to the lobby, it'll be fully restored, but he can't keep returning all the time. So once he clears the 4th floor, he plans to switch both shield and sword. Other than that, he thinks he relied too much on his blessings, but after fighting for several days, he gained a wide range of skills. The stats that had been stuck started rising fast, which showed him that varied experience works better than repeating the same actions. Because of that, he thinks he spent most of the early floors busy dodging arrows, and his combat skills only shot up so much because he kept fighting all those goblins. While he's thinking about his blessings, a loud roar suddenly erupts behind him and startles him. Then we see a goblin that looks much stronger than the others he fought before. He grabs his sword and gets ready, saying this one is a little different. It's a bit smaller, but otherwise very similar. Either way, he prepares for a one-on-one fight. The goblin rushes in, and our protagonist braces himself. Then the goblin's fist suddenly glows red. A moment later, the scene cuts to our protagonist taking a direct hit to the stomach. He jumps back and wonders what that was, because it felt like the goblin's punch had teleported. But suddenly the goblin is already right in front of him, ready to land another hit. Our protagonist instantly activates battle concentration. Even though he can see the path of the attack, he still gets hit cleanly, and while he's in the air, he uses teleportation and in an instant smashes the goblin in the face with a heavy punch. Right after that, he throws a kick, but the goblin dodges it. Our protagonist is surprised and realizes that if he gets caught by that skill with his guard down, he's probably dead. The goblin gets ready to attack again, so our protagonist immediately activates Talaria's wings and strikes with them. That forces the goblin back while he avoids its blow too. Then they stare each other down, and our protagonist says some of his teeth are broken from that last hit. He wonders what kind of skill that was, and it feels strange that the goblin can use it over and over with no clear limit. Then the goblin charges again, ready to turn him into a punching bag. Our protagonist instantly throws his sword at it. The goblin blocks with its fists, just as he expected, and at the same time he pulls a knife from his inventory as they rush closer. Then he throws the knife, but the goblin dodges that too. Still, it lets our protagonist close in, and he says that when it comes to speed, he has the clear advantage. The goblin blocks his attack and tightens its defense, making a direct assault useless. Even so, our protagonist lands a solid kick to its stomach, and at the same time, with teleportation active, he kicks its leg and finally breaks through its defense. The moment he lands a punch, he gets hit in the face too, almost knocking him out. Our protagonist is thrown back but gets up right away. Thinking to himself, he quickly grabs his knife. He pulls out his knife and drives it into the goblin's head while it's still unconscious on the ground. After that, he gets a reward, the birthstone of Gurrit. He's relieved just to be alive, then complains that the system made him fight an enemy with a skill that seemed to have no limit. Weren't goblins supposed to be easy? Even so, he levels up again. Right after that, the scene shifts to what looks like a healing spring. It's a fountain near the boss hall, and as he gets ready to drink from it, he thinks back on his last opponent and how insanely strong that goblin was. Once he finishes drinking, he heads for the final boss room. He admits the 4th floor was already rough, so the boss is probably on a whole different level. For a second, he wonders if fighting it now would be too reckless. After thinking it over, he decides to return to the lobby. Rushing things got him nowhere, so he'll stick to the method that worked before. He also admits hearing about the real world made him restless. Then he goes back to the lobby, 3rd attempt, day 14, 8:30. Now he's level 8, and his stats have gone up a lot. Even he says his growth rate has been crazy fast. He's also gotten much better with his blessings, and using them feels a lot more natural now. Then all of a sudden, he decides to go back to the floor. Soon he's standing in front of the final boss hall again. This time, he chooses to open the gate. A strong gust sweeps over him, and the moment the gate opens, he gets teleported. He ends up on what looks like a mountain at night. He looks around, wondering where he is, when a message appears in front of him, telling him to eliminate the Goblin King. That makes him tense up a little. Then he starts wondering where this Goblin King could be. Since he's halfway up the mountain, he has to choose go down or keep climbing. After a short pause, he decides to head up the mountain. Time passes while he climbs, and when he reaches the top, he spots a fortress with huge walls. Using his scope, he estimates there are about 20 guards. He figures the gate is probably the only normal way in, but his wings might give him another option. So he moves in. He sprints straight toward the fortress, and when he gets close to the wall, he activates teleportation and jumps up fast, climbing over it. As soon as he gets on top, he spots a goblin and sneaks up behind it before slitting its throat. He decides to deal with the guards first, then search the whole fortress for the Goblin King. And that's where chapter 25 ends. Right after stabbing that mini-goblin in the neck, he's relieved no one saw him, and silently thanks his level 4 stealth skill. He says this whole place feels stressful, like one of those stealth games from his old world. But then a mini-goblin in one of the towers notices him and starts shouting to warn the others. The mini-goblin is basically in full panic. He just gives an excited look and figures stealth was probably optional anyway, so he activates Talaria's wings and says today they're all getting buried. No one here is getting away. The scene cuts to morning, and by then every goblin in that fortress has been wiped out by him. Now he just stands there taking in the view. As he looks out, he thinks this world might not be some fake space made with magic or programming after all. It could actually be another planet somewhere in the universe. The place feels that real to him, and he admits living in a world like this might not be so bad. Then he gets up and forces himself to focus. He counts about 32 goblins living in this fortress. They weren't as strong as the goblin instructors from the 4th floor, and there were fewer than he expected. That's why taking this place wasn't too hard. The problem is, he still didn't find the Goblin King. Looking toward a distant city, he figures that's where the king probably is. The city is massive, surrounded by mountains on every side. At its center stands a huge castle, which is likely where the Goblin King is staying. While studying it through his scope, he notices the buildings aren't just stone, they're well maintained too. He's impressed, because this doesn't look like some small tribe, it looks like a real city. That makes him question whether these creatures are really goblins at all. In his mind, goblins should be wild and primitive, yet hundreds or even thousands could be living there. The scale of it is huge. He figures it would take about a full day to reach the city, and that's not all. There are forts on the surrounding mountain peaks, one at each of the 4 cardinal directions. Judging by the city's size, there could be at least 100,000 soldiers there. If they surround him, he has no chance. So fighting outside the city is out of the question. That leaves only 3 possible battlegrounds: the central castle or one of these forts. Then something catches his eye. He quickly checks it through his scope. What he sees is a small cavalry unit of mini-goblins, around 20 to 30 of them heading straight for the fortress he's in. He immediately says that works even better for him, because he'll fight them right here. Showtime. As he climbs down from the wall, he thinks the goblins won't open this fortress gate easily. And if things go bad, he can quickly escape into the mountains and hit another fort. His plan is to slowly cut down their numbers by taking all 4 forts. Once the goblins abandon them, he'll slip into the city, keep picking them off from the shadows, then infiltrate the castle and kill the Goblin King. Third attempt. Day 17, 9:20 at night. A goblin screams in pain, and he snaps, "What are you yelling for? Shut up." As he jumps onto one of the towers, he explains that during these fights, he noticed the goblins were communicating with each other. The front line shouted warnings, and some of the riders split from the group to race back to the city. He still can't understand their language, but he can tell their leader did everything he could to keep him busy. The goblin held out until his final moment just to give the others enough time to reach the city and warn everyone about him. Even he starts to respect that. These goblins don't seem mindless at all. They almost look like they're just trying to protect their home while he tears through them. Maybe they're fighting for their families. In his mind, that leader was still the enemy, but it was a smart move. Then he uses his wings to glide after the riders who escaped to warn the city, and he goes after them without hesitation. No mercy now, they're done for. He closes in and cuts one down with his sword right away. The last 2 goblins instantly realize how bad this is. He explains that the goblins first sent 20 soldiers, then 30, then 50. Once that number passed 100, he left and attacked a different fort in another direction, and he took that fortress too. While cutting down the fleeing goblins, he explains that Talaria's wings let him travel between forts in under 3 hours. Meanwhile, the troops sent to retake them need a full day to chase him, because they have to pass through the city first. In other words, they can't compete with his mobility at all. That speed gives him a huge edge. The goblins stay stubborn, and keep sending troops about 200 to each fort. By now, he's already destroyed 1 full company at one of them. That means he's crushed around 200 goblins there alone. At this point, he's completely controlling the pace of the fight. Even he says they must have thought 200 soldiers would be enough to kill him. But inside a fortress, he can handle 200 of them easily now, especially after leveling up 2 more times. He can barely believe how much stronger he's gotten just from killing goblins and taking fort after fort over the course of a single week. The scene then cuts to a group of goblins, and right after that, the Goblin King appears on his throne. At the same time, our protagonist is watching through his scope, tracking what looks like a force of around 800 goblins. Their numbers are seriously starting to pile up. Either those guys have a goblin factory in their city, or they've been having kids like crazy. Ho says this force is huge. He figures the main city can't have many soldiers left after sending so many after him. He says that after a week of non-stop attacks, the goblins were clearly wearing down. Their cavalry had dropped hard, and most foot soldiers looked like rushed civilians with no real training. Out of every 5, maybe 1 actually knew how to fight. So in his view, they're throwing in every last soldier they have. That means it's almost time to head for the castle and wreck those empty houses on the way. He's still thinking these goblins are like NPCs that just respawn out of nowhere. Then a window pops up beside him saying the god of duels is disappointed by Ho's unfair methods. The protagonist shoots back, asking what he was supposed to do, charge the whole city head on and die? Another message appears. This time, the god of chaos says he approves of what MC did. Finally, a god who likes my work. Still, that feels a little creepy since it sounds like an evil god. Either way, it's time to hit the city. With that, Hode heads toward the great city. Some time passes. Soon he is already gliding above the city. He lands on a house and feels satisfied. His infiltration worked. Now he has to decide what to do next. attack out of nowhere, then fly off when the guards show up, or start fires in different parts of the city. He thinks that might work better, because if the whole place starts burning, no one would be able to put it all out alone. He's really considering setting the entire city on fire just to draw them out. That's cold. Still, Ho says he only needs a distraction to throw the goblins into chaos. Even if the troops outside come back, he can always run or hide inside the city. While he works through a plan, something catches his eye. He notices a goblin child with its mother, both of them smiling. Nearby, others are playing too. Then a thought hits him hard. As bits of goblin daily life unfold, drifts deeper into his thoughts because these goblins are just living normal lives in this city. They eat, laugh, and love. He starts wondering if this really is just an illusion. Did the system truly create this world only for a player? The idea shakes him, because if this place is real somewhere in the universe, then to these people he's the monster. A terrifying monster that showed up one day and started killing everyone. That one hurts. He remembers the goblin who tried to say something before dying, and wonders what it meant. None of the goblins he fought died quietly. They all resisted to the very end. Some stared at Ho with pure hatred. Others charged him with rage and bitterness. Some even held their dead companions and cried. He's killed countless goblins, but never felt anything before, because he believed it was all just a game. Now that certainty starts to break. Ho had always assumed the goblins were fake, and that after dying they would just come back later, but now he can't stop asking if that was ever true. In the end, he gives up on destroying the city and heads straight for the castle before the troops can return. As he flies over it, he wonders how he'll find the king and where the king might be hiding. While studying the castle, he spots a sealed window and thinks that has to be it. So he rushes in through it, smashing his way inside. At once, the goblins gather to protect their king. Ho realizes he guessed right. He figures the 4 bodyguards are probably strong, but says calmly that he'll deal with them soon enough. Then, striking a cool pose, he activates his teleport skill and starts tearing through everyone in the room. In moments, he closes the distance to the king and ends up face to face with him, with no one left in between. Of course, Ho pulls out his sword from his inventory to finish it, but the king makes a small motion and raises one hand. The protagonist instantly stops his final strike. Confused, he wonders what that was. Then the king says something MC can't understand, though it sounds like he has no plan to resist. "Sorry man, but I can't understand a word you're saying. No clue. Seriously, how are you this dumb?" Then we finally get a clear look at the Goblin King's face, and honestly, it's hard not to feel a little bad for him. Ho says that if the king won't fight back, then he'll make it quick and painless, and that's the end of him. He feels pretty great about it. But right after stabbing the king, he notices goblin children hiding nearby. They come out of hiding as Hor tries to make it clear he never meant to kill them. Then we get a look at their faces. Even without knowing their language, the protagonist can tell exactly what they're thinking. Right after that, the message appears announcing the completion of the tutorial's 4th floor. More windows follow, some list his rewards, while others say the gods want to give him a special skill instead of an extra reward. So the gods hold a vote on whether Hor should receive that special ability. The result is 12 in favor and 7 against. And with that, MC receives the skill Knowledge Before the Age of Babel, level 5. Nice reference, this story is really bringing in the Tower of Babel. He wonders what the skill does and what its effect is. Then suddenly, he starts understanding what those kids are saying. "You monster. God will punish you for this." So that's it. Hor tries to explain that this wasn't his choice. The tutorial ordered him to kill them all. He says he was forced into it, and is only trying to find a way out of this place. Even so, he can feel the goblins' hatred toward him. That makes him question all over again whether this world is real. Then another message appears saying the god of adventure is blinding his eyes. His vision starts to go dark. A second message follows. The goddess of slowness is furious. What the heck is happening? A moment later, he wakes up in that wide hall where Kirakiri stays. When he looks to the side, he sees her standing there with her back to him. Then she turns around and her expression is nothing like usual. Hor can tell right away that she's been avoiding him. As he walks over, she asks if he's angry with her. After all, in the last episode, she basically pushed him into the portal. Before he can even answer, she keeps apologizing and says this is all her fault. Hor tells her he isn't mad. He figures she was avoiding him because he was covered in blood, but she keeps insisting that he has every reason to be angry. That makes him remember what happened on the last floor. As soon as he read that message, his sight went dark, and he was dragged back by force. He thinks it over and realizes the gods can directly use their power on him. Confused, he wonders why the god of adventure acted that way, and why the goddess of slowness got so upset. He turns to Kirakiri, and says he has a lot of questions for her, including the ones he didn't ask last time. He should have plenty to use now. So he starts by asking about the gods and tells her to explain as much as possible, especially anything connected to him. She pauses for a moment, then says the gods are interested in him because they want to see if he qualifies to become one of their apostles. That's a big deal. Hor is even more puzzled. Kirakiri goes on to say that getting a god's attention is already hard, and becoming an apostle is even harder because it requires meeting some unknown condition. Pointing at him, she says he's an unheard of case, and that one day he'll have to make a choice. After that, she starts explaining the goddess of slowness. That title doesn't just mean slow movement for objects or living things. She's the one who follows the endless flow of time for all eternity without ever failing. Ho is basically only catching the simple version. Yeah, this is a lot. When he asks about the god of adventure next, Kirikiri tells him that's the limit for this round of questions. In his head, the protagonist thinks he already spent the value of 2 whole floors just on questions. Information about the gods is seriously expensive. Kirikiri tells him not to overthink it. That surprises him, and the events of the last floor come rushing back. With a heavy look on his face, he quietly says yes. More time passes in Kirikiri's world. Then we see the 2 of them together while the rabbit girl advises him on what gear he should buy. Thanks to her help, Ho managed to buy some weapons. One was a gladius blessed by an unnamed god. Its special effect is simple but great. The grip never slips from the user's hand unless they want to let go. He also got the Kazma gear of a wild warrior, a long single-edged sword meant for fighting from horseback. Magic or shaman-type buffs can't be used on it. On top of that, he bought one sword in the size he was already used to, plus another that was twice as big. Those became his 2 main melee weapons. Since each one fits a different style and situation, Ho knows they'll both be useful very soon. And the last item was the best one, a Punisher pistol. That's really its name. It fires powerful blasts by mixing gunpowder with magic. Its only downside is brutal. After 5 shots, it breaks on its own. A weapon this strong was bound to come with some kind of limit. MC says he was told this pistol was needed to clear the 5th floor, so he bought it without hesitation. Because of that though, he had to settle for a backup hand shield. He admits all these items are amazing, but they used up every point he had saved. Next time, he plans to earn more and buy a better shield. After that, the portal to the next floor opens. Before leaving, Ho thanks Kirikiri and says goodbye. She shouts for him to do his best and not forget the cake next time. That makes him smile. He says he was already wondering why she hadn't brought that up yet. Then he steps through the portal and arrives at the 5th floor lobby. He says he's finally made it to the 5th floor. By now, he can barely remember the names or faces of the people he met in the 1st floor lobby. Maybe it's because months have passed. He's even forgotten the girl he almost lost a baby with. That one really hits hard. Lost in those thoughts, Ho looks pretty down and says he needs to clear his head. Trying the next floor before sorting out his thoughts would be too dangerous. That leads him back to the question he asked himself on the 4th floor. Were those goblins real or not? He admits they weren't the savage, filthy monsters he expected. They had a society, families, emotions, basic technology, and even a ranking system. The only real difference from humans, he says, was that they were goblins. And if they weren't just illusions made by the tutorial, then what Ho did could be called murder. He killed them by his own judgment, and he knows blaming the tutorial would be pointless. So he starts arguing with himself, asking why he killed them, while trying to justify it by saying they attacked first. But then he rejects that excuse. The goblins mostly fought to drive him away instead of hunting him down. In the end, he was the one who started the fight, pushed it forward, and finished it. So Ho admits he killed the goblins to clear the tutorial. They were in his way, and that's why he slaughtered them. He goes even further. If he met another goblin, he'd still choose to kill it. This place isn't a game. People in his world are still being killed by monsters, even now. If he grows stronger in the tutorial, he might return and save them. Then he corrects himself. It's not about saving everyone. It's about protecting his family and friends. Honestly, that way of thinking isn't hard to understand. Most people would probably feel the same. When it comes down to it, they'd want to protect the people closest to them. Not everyone would choose to get stronger for all of humanity. Many would fight only for the ones they care about. Still thinking deeply in the lobby, Ho realizes that if he wants to leave the tutorial, he has to finish all of it. And as long as he has a reason to keep fighting, he won't hesitate to strike his enemies. The goblins were his enemies from the start. He may have attacked first, but there was never any room for peace. If he thinks about it simply, the winner is the one who gets what they want, just like back when he was a pro gamer. In this world, the strong beat the weak, except here losing means death. That's why the protagonist knows he can't hesitate for even a second. He also understands this guilt will never fully go away. During a brief quiet moment, he remembers Kirikiri and realizes even she was worried about him. As he walks through the hall, he decides this question has no easy answer. He can't ignore it either. It's something he'll have to carry for a long time, and every now and then he'll come back to it. That way, those thoughts won't grow until they eat him alive. Then the scene shifts to another lobby, where the representative confederation is staying. The mood there is dark and the players look beaten down. 2 sisters appear, and one warns the other not to open her inventory because that's forbidden there. This confederation tries to control the weaker players by force, making rules they have to follow or face punishment. Even so, one sister glances at a guard and quickly pulls out a little dried meat from her inventory. Then she tells her sister to hide it in her clothes and eat it little by little. She knows that if they get caught doing this without permission, they'll be punished. They might even lose the little food they have left. The long-haired sister explains that these people have superhuman strength, and anyone who resisted was beaten nearly to death. She goes on to say that the only real difference between them and the leaders group is timing. They were from the first attempt, while the sisters were from the second. Because they cleared more tutorial floors, the leader's allies became much stronger. That's probably why they don't let the others leave the lobby and challenge the tutorial themselves. While hiding the dried meat, she regrets letting them take their weapons so easily. She says that from everything she's studied so far, the menu screen, the portals to other dimensions, the weapons, and the status window, it feels like they're trapped inside a novel or a game world. Even so, she thinks it's useless, because if this really is a game, the system should have explained more. What kind of world this is, where they are, and what they need to do to get stronger like the leader's followers. In short, she needs more information. But that brief hope doesn't last long. A thug working for the Confederation leader spots her using the inventory. The moment he's seen them, it's obvious they're in trouble. Everything falls apart fast. A scream from one of the sisters rings out. Then the scene cuts to the leader, who says there are always people like this, traitors who don't know their place, so he decides to punish her and make an example out of her. Suddenly the scene shifts to a tunnel that looks like the tutorial's first floor. The Confederation leader is there, breathing hard. This is a flashback to his first attempt at clearing the first floor. Surprisingly, he had made it all the way to the healing spring, right before the boss room. But when he reached the boss gate, a message appeared saying his first attempt was over and he had failed to clear the first floor stage, so his run ended right there. At once, he was teleported to a different hall. When he looked around, he saw many other players who had also failed the first floor. That sight made him feel relieved. Not long after that, the second attempt began and new people started arriving in the waiting hall. The lobby. You could tell right away those people were just like him. They had also failed their first attempt. Watching them panic with no one there to explain anything, he came up with a twisted plan. Become king and rule this world. Yeah, this guy clearly thinks he's some kind of genius. After taking control of the first floor lobby, the Representatives Guild moved on to the second floor and started stealing supplies from newcomers. Yeah, this guy's a real problem. And they didn't stop there. They also kept anyone from challenging the floor alone, then made examples out of rebels by beating or torturing them nearly to death. If you think about it, dying in the waiting hall isn't easy because everyone has insane regeneration. Still, it's not impossible. We'll see that later. And no matter how much time passed, players could always return to the waiting hall after the second attempt, right before the boss room. For 29 days, you have to survive on your own, but something good waits at the end. And that reward was this lovely slave king. Just look at his face. That's how he turned the weak and scared people, the ones who didn't dare keep going in the tutorial, into his slaves. And now, finally, that backstory recap for this crazy leader of the Confederation is over. Thank God. I'll be honest, that part dragged a little. Maybe it's because I'm used to the main character throwing hands instead of sitting through all this talk. Seriously, that was a lot of dialogue. Anyway, let's get back to the story. Speaking of him, the scene cuts to our main character, thinking about how fast he leveled up on the last floor. His stats improved a lot too, but his resistances and tolerances stayed the same. Makes sense. He barely got hit on that floor, not even once. And he still says it might have been better to fail on purpose a few times so he could raise his pain tolerance even more. That's why I call this guy a total masochist. Best or not, this dude is out of his mind. While checking his open status screen, he remembers getting a message from the goddess of slowness, saying she was furious with him. But this new message doesn't sound anything like the last one. Now he starts wondering if she's even mad at him anymore. Then another message pops up, and he opens it right away. It was sent by someone whose name is hard enough that I'm just calling him Kim. That catches the main character's attention because he's seen that name before, so now he wants to know what Kim wants. So he enters the chat with him. Kim starts by praising him, saying he's amazing and already made it to the 5th floor. Big time suck up. Then Kim explains that most players still haven't cleared the 2nd floor on hell difficulty. And even on hard difficulty, many are stuck on the 3rd. And somehow that's supposed to be a problem? In his head, the main character admits reaching the 5th floor would have been much harder without the authority skill. He also figures that, judging by the community, nobody else seems to know about it. And honestly, neither do we. At this point, it's hard to tell if that skill was mentioned before or if this is just a translation issue. Kim then asks if he knows about the Representative Confederation or the Representatives Guild. Call it whichever you want. The name changes depending on the translation. The main character remembers they already sent him a message and says the whole group seems suspicious. Kim agrees and adds that he thinks the guild has been taking supplies from new players. That doesn't surprise the main character at all, judging by how they act. Kim goes on to say they've also been trying to take down high-ranking players. When asked why, he admits he still doesn't know and plans to investigate more. So the main character asks if there's anyone he can help. Then Kim asks if he knows anything about the day of the Great Conference. He says a top-ranked player got information about it from a moderator. Maybe Kiri, maybe not. It's also not fully clear whether that top-ranked player was him. He continues by saying it'll be the tutorial's first event where players from every difficulty gather together. And that's all the information he has. Kim says the Great Conference will probably happen very soon, which even surprises the main character since Kim seems to know more than expected. Kim tells him to keep this conversation secret since they still don't know enough about the Confederation, and the main character agrees. After that, they say goodbye. The main character is sure the representative confederation will show up at the Great Conference, and they'll probably try to form alliances with the top rankers. He also thinks back to how hard the fourth floor's boss room was, so he knows he needs to prepare for the next floor. No matter what blocks his path, monster or human, he refuses to lose. As time keeps passing, the day of the Great Conference gets closer. And yeah, somebody's definitely dying soon. After some time, we're shown a lizard man roaring. A second later, it gets smashed right in the face with a shield. That hit was clean. The main character gets attacked too, but dodges it easily. For the enemy, it's already over. Using Azaz of Teleria together with teleportation, he moves so fast the lizard can barely react, even while trying to defend itself. But our main character is way faster and more agile. They stare each other down for a moment, then he uses teleport again while swapping weapons from his inventory. Before the lizard man realizes it, the main character is already right in front of it, driving his sword straight into its chest. Quick and brutal, and he keeps tearing through those lizard men after that. He explains that the monsters on this floor are lizard men and other reptilian types, and unlike goblins, they're far more aggressive. They don't rely on trenches or barricades either. Instead, they fight head-on, and their combat skills are much better than the goblins, which makes them tougher to handle. Even so, thanks to how much he improved on the last floor, he can beat them without much trouble. From a growth standpoint, he thinks this is actually a good chance to get used to his new weapon, so he decides not to move on until he's comfortable using the single-edged sword, and stops for the day. He also needs to get ready for the Great Conference, since it's almost here, so he heads back to the lobby. Once there, he says burn resistance is the easiest resistance skill to train. Heat and cold resistance are harder because setting up the right environment takes effort, and raising stun or numbness resistance alone is even tougher. Burn resistance, though, is simple. He can train it with his own grip by heating up his hand until smoke starts coming off it. For him, it's the perfect way to sit around and kill time. Next, he opens the community chat, and it's complete chaos. Messages are flying by non-stop. He says that a few hours earlier, a top-ranked player posted information about the Great Conference on the notice board. Once that news spread, the whole chat exploded. People who had only talked through messages without ever seeing each other would finally get to meet face-to-face. For everyone in the tutorial, this is the most peaceful event so far. For players risking their lives on each floor, the news felt like rain in the desert. Even so, the main character still isn't sure the event will stay peaceful. Still, seeing everyone so excited gives the whole thing a festival-like mood, and that gets him a little excited too. Then a window appears in front of him, announcing that the day of the Great Conference has arrived. It says the event will last 24 hours and asks him to enter. The message also warns that force summoning will begin in 5 hours. That's when he realizes the floor timer has stopped during the event. Right after that, a portal opens in front of him. Without hesitating, he jumps in. As soon as he enters the portal, a window appears with the basic information about the place. Looking around, he realizes it's the same place where he usually meets Kiri, so he figures she's probably the host of this event. As he looks around, Ho quickly notices a lot of people already made it to the event, so he starts moving through the crowd. In his head, he admits the place feels pretty lively. Everyone is laughing, chatting, and this is the big conference. Then someone recognizes Ho and comes over asking for an autograph. When MC turns around, the guy introduces himself as Kim, the same person he talked to in the chat. He's a challenger from normal difficulty. Kim also says he used to be a huge fan of the protagonist, back when the protagonist was a pro player. The two chat for a bit and keep things casual. Before long, Ho asks about the scumbags from the Representative Confederation. Kim says they still haven't shown up and will probably wait until the last minute. While they're talking, the famous top rankers arrive. Kim warns Ho to be careful. He's sure the Confederation has allies among the top rankers. Just to be sure, he asks how strong MC is compared to them. He thinks for a second, then says, "I'm crazy strong, kid." A little later, the protagonist and Kim mingle with other players, trying to gather more information about the Representatives Guild. At one point, Ho quietly asks Kim if any of those top rankers might belong to the guild. Kim says probably not. After that, MC leaves them to keep talking. Still, something about it feels suspicious. Over there, as Ho walks across the field, he remembers the message he got on arrival. Nobody can attack anyone here. That leads him to one question. What if he attacks himself? He laughs, then activates self-harm, his masochism skill. First he tries cutting his own hand, but the blade just slides off like some barrier is protecting him. Then he tries again, and even when he manages to hurt himself, the wound heals right away. That gives him another bright idea. He punches himself, but as usual, barely feels any pain. Not stopping there, Ho even tries choking himself. The moment he squeezes his own throat, his hand gets pushed away on its own. He thinks that over until Kim calls him over. Then Ho suddenly goes, "Wait, what was your name again, kid?" Kim answers, "Come on, it's Kim. You already forgot? Oh right, how did it go again?" He thinks Kim is a genuinely good guy, someone who helps others without wanting anything back. He really respects that. Maybe they'll meet again later and stay friends. Though with this place, Kim could also end up dead like Ho's old friends on the first floor. Time passes and the two keep talking. The protagonist says they maybe should have spread news on the community forums about what the Representatives Guild has been doing. Kim answers that it would have been too dangerous for the informant, especially since that person is in the same hall with them. We learn more about that informant, someone being held under the guild's control, but still managed to pass Kim some information. Kim has taken their suffering to heart and says this kind of thing will keep happening. He just wishes there were some way to stop it. Ho says that'll be hard since players on the lower floors can barely get involved. Most are too scared. Even so, Kim believes at least 10 people on normal difficulty are against the guild, and at least one on hard difficulty too. They're all worried that if this group keeps growing, it'll become even more dangerous. In MC's mind, everyone gathered here is weaker than him. He can tell just by looking at them. In the real world, clothes and money show status. In the tutorial, it's weapons and armor. The way people move, shift their balance, and keep their distance tells him even more. He's recently learned how to judge skill from details like that. Between what he learned in the community and what he heard here, he can tell there's a huge gap between him and the others. Even the way they carry themselves is different. Players from easy difficulty usually seem more relaxed than the rest, even if only a little. Being able to farm points and deal with fewer deadly traps is probably why. Those on normal difficulty usually earn only the points they need to survive. Hard difficulty players interest Ho more. Most of them are stuck on the first or second floor, and even with shared clear info, only a small number reach the third floor. That led to a high death rate and very few clears. Still, the hard mode challengers on the third floor are stranger than the rest. The protagonist figures it may be because of the difficulty, but every one of them has a grim look on their face. After a while, MC basically starts teaching. He explains that they need to raise their resistances, especially heat resistance, since he once cleared a trap like that. His advice is simple: stay in until you're almost dead, then go back to the lobby. One of them asks how they're supposed to raise heat resistance, and he says they can make fire with a heated stone. Then out of nowhere he grips his hand so hard, smoke starts coming off it. Everyone around him is stunned. After that, one of the onlookers asks what his heat resistance level is. Ho says he thinks his heat and cold resistance are level 4, and his burn resistance is level 7. That shocks everyone even more, and one person straight up asks if he's some kind of monster. The protagonist decides not to mention that his pain resistance is already level 11. Then suddenly Kim calls out to him and says the Confederation group has arrived. Ho looks straight at the leader, already itching to beat him down. Kim steps forward first and says they need to talk. Now he's face to face with the leader of the guild, but they ask who he even is. Kim introduces himself and directly asks if they've been stealing food and water from other people and attacking players too. The leader gives him a mocking look and asks what proof he has. Then the leader says if Kim has evidence, he should show it. While Kim starts bringing up the rumors, Ho senses someone approaching, and then who shows up? That creepy guy MC compares to Orochimaru. The group arriving with him is probably the top rankers working with the guild. Ho notes that on their side they only have a few normal difficulty members in him, so he takes a closer look and notices some people there aren't a threat at all, along with a few top rankers from normal and hard difficulty. The frightened people standing behind them are probably the victims, and that makes him realize this is worse than he thought. Then his eyes meet one of the sisters shown earlier. She immediately tries to signal him, and the protagonist catches it. Suddenly she runs straight toward him. The leader notices and tries to stop her, but right as he's about to grab her, the moment everyone was waiting for finally happens. Ho uses teleportation, slips past the leader and saves her. On the way through, he lands one hit to the leader's stomach and drops him flat. Once MC shields her, he turns and asks what she wants him to do now. Kill them all. Then the scene rewinds to the point of view of the girl Ho just saved. She had been watching him, thinking that this was Li Hujai him. No way. To her, he was the only calm person in all this. Unlike everyone else, he acted like none of it was a big deal, completely at ease. But she knows she has no time left. This event is her last chance. That's when we learn the Confederation leader killed her sister, the girl with the long hair. Before dying, her sister told her everything she had discovered. It was information about the tutorial world, and even if it wasn't enough on its own to justify risking her life, she memorized every last detail. In the info her sister left behind, one name stood out: Ho, known as the only survivor of the hell difficulty stages. Crazy. Seriously, most people in the community called him a liar. Even so, he really had sent useful trap info to help the newbies. According to her, the ones doubting him the most were the normal stage rankers. She doesn't know all the details, but lately even those rankers seem to have started trusting him. To her, this was the only move left. It was all or nothing. Then their eyes met through the crowd, and she wondered if he had figured out she was their informant. But if she wanted to bring down that bastard leader, she needed Ho's strength. That was the moment she finally moved and ran for it. Somebody help me. And like that was ever a problem for him. Man, they knocked me down, good grief. Now we're back to the present. In Holmes' mind, helping people had always made things worse. Every time he stepped in, the problem grew and more people got hurt. But this time, he doesn't care. So who do you want me to kill? The leader can barely stand after that one hit from the protagonist. Still, he starts yelling and asks why Holmes attacked him for no reason. The leader's group quickly joins in and starts blaming MC2. Then he shows them his wings and drops his coldest line yet. Don't rush me. Take it easy. Come at me. Calm. The The girl is already terrified, and the others freeze on the spot. Nobody even dares move. Then Ho makes it clear he's ready to put every one of them down and calls them all out. Seeing no way out, the Confederation leader tries to talk his way free, calling it all a misunderstanding and begging for a few minutes to explain. He keeps trying to calm things down and says they should just talk. The protagonist ignores that, jumps in, and says he'll help the guy build up a tolerance for pain. When is this guy ever going to catch a break? Just hearing that almost gives him a heart attack, so he orders his lackeys to protect him. One of them swings a sword at home. MC stops it with one hand, and basically turns the guy's arm into mush. My arm, he broke my arm, that had to hurt like crazy. Then Ho uses the guy he dropped as a step. He jumps right off him and keeps moving. Next he goes straight for the one with the huge axe. The guy tries to defend himself, but he drives a kick into his stomach first. The protagonist explains that the system lowers the damage from his attacks, but it doesn't erase it. Then he gives the guy a light slap across the face, and that alone knocks him out cold. His neck twists at a nasty angle. For a second it looks fatal. But like always, the system quickly regenerates the damage. While watching, Ho realizes the system's protection isn't perfect. The damage piling up in their arms, organs, and spine is still there. Sword attacks can be blocked almost completely, but physical blows only get weakened. So even with regeneration, they still feel all that pain. At the same time, MC notices Choi and a few allies going after the Representatives Guild to stop them from escaping. He thinks that was a smart move by Choi, but even if they did get away, he knows he could still catch all of them. Suddenly, someone behind him praises his movements and asks what kind of skill he just used. Ho turns and asks who this guy is. Then Choi shouts his name, Myung-Jin Chan. Hearing it, the protagonist remembers him, a ranker from the 6th floor of normal difficulty. So this guy is no joke. Right after that, Myung-Jin Chan says MC isn't the only one with special skills, and purple energy flares around his spear. He wastes no time and invites him to fight, throwing in an insult for good measure. The purple glow on the spear grows brighter. Ho watches and wonders what the skill actually does. Maybe it boosts strength, or maybe speed, like the goblin soldiers he fought before. Then the protagonist tells him to stop showing off and come at him with everything he has. You're not that impressive. You're a loser. Ho makes the first move and Myung-Jin Chan thrusts with his spear. Of course, MC dodges with ease and points out that he can't just throw out spear attacks like that. That mistake leaves an opening and he cuts him. Just as the protagonist expected, slashing attacks work really well here. As he watches the man drop his spear and run to pick it back up, MC stops and thinks, this is the top 5 ranker. After that, Ho turns back toward the group leader and his allies. Then he pulls both swords from his inventory and says he'll set these bastards straight. Time to soften them up and show who's in charge. The leader goes pale. Sure, he won't be spared. Some time later, Ho is just lying there taking a nap, and in his mind he admits this place is actually pretty nice for sleeping, especially with the breeze. It would be even better if he didn't have to hear these idiots arguing. Then a window pops up saying his basic sword skill reached level 7. He figures that happened because he got to try a lot of different attack patterns, and these guys were weaker than the goblins. Until now, his sword skills had mostly grown through passive fighting, blocking with a shield and striking vital spots fast against stronger enemies. But because these opponents were so weak, he could attack more aggressively and test other methods. He'd like to try a few more attacks, but judging by the situation, he probably won't get the chance. Meanwhile, Choi acted as soon as Hu-Ai started crushing the Confederation members. Instead of joining the fight, he used ropes to tie up the ones he had already beaten and pin them to the ground. The protagonist, meanwhile, wonders what to do with them now that everyone's been put in their place. Then the informant steps forward. The girl who gave Choi the information about the Confederation's victims. She suggests a plan to shut the Confederation down, send the first-floor challengers to the second floor, then get ready in case the leader's allies come looking for revenge. If they do that, the Confederation won't be able to prey on new challengers anymore. The people who supported the leader would become training dummies as punishment, and their victims would slowly lose their fear, unite and build a resistance force. After sharing her idea, she gathers everyone in the field and tells them what she went through, along with what the Confederation did to the other players. That wins over the people who had no ties to the Confederation. With her words, she brings the victims together and forms a new group. Thanks to Choi, even the rankers back off and follow her plan. For now, the victims are getting help and training from the rankers, using the Confederation members as punching bags. People can criticize it, and yeah, it's morally ugly, but they solved it this way because there wasn't a better option. Ho says there are still 13 hours left before the event ends, and he wonders if he should spend that time sleeping. But suddenly, he feels someone coming closer. Without even looking, he tells the person they did their best. Then we see Julia standing in front of him. She sits beside him, and an awkward silence settles in. Ho thinks the whole thing feels pretty strange. Julia says that on behalf of her older sister and the other victims, she wants to thank him again. MC hadn't even known she had an older sister, but she keeps going, saying what she's about to ask might sound shameless, maybe even unfair, and he already looks like he's bracing for a very long story. Oh boy. After a while, the protagonist says she told him everything what happened before she entered the tutorial world and everything that happened after. She also explained how her sister died. When she finished, she asked for his help. She knew it was a shameless favor, but promised she would repay him no matter what. That request catches the protaka, so off guard he even starts stuttering, saying that's not the issue. He's so flustered it's almost painful. Then he asks if she wants him to train her. She quickly says no. If possible, she wants power right away. Well, that would be nice for anybody. Then the protaka suddenly gets an idea, and as always, he handles it in his own special way. By special way, I mean he straight up puts a Glock in her hand. Instant power delivered. She asks how strong it is, and he admits he's never tested it, so he doesn't know for sure. Still, he warns her to be very careful with it. Brilliant move. She just lost her sister and went through hell with the Confederation, and his answer is giving her a gun. Surely this can't go wrong. She thanks him and says from now on she'll live for others and fight to protect her group. And to the prota's disappointment, she adds that this is also how she'll repay her debt to him. Seeing her hold that thing like she's already on a mission, the prota asks where she's going. She just turns slightly and says she's going to test it. And of course she already knows who the first target will be. The scene cuts, and that guy gets kicked right in the face. While groaning in pain, he swears that one day he'll get his glorious revenge. Yeah, good luck with that. The leader of the Confederation immediately panics and asks what she's about to do. Her answer is cold. Whatever she's about to do, she's going to enjoy it a lot. Meanwhile, the prota stays back and watches. A moment later, she pulls a bottle from her inventory and opens it. The prota guesses it's probably lubricant. She rubs some on her fingers and jams them right into the Confederation leader's eyes. He starts screaming in agony. She keeps grinding her fingers into his eyes without mercy. Then she raises the Glock to his head. She forces the barrel into his eye and pulls the trigger. After blowing his brains out, the prota realizes instant death is the easiest way to beat the Hall's automatic regeneration. If the target dies fast enough, the healing can't activate in time. In short, instant death cancels instant regeneration. He looks at her, and she calmly says the weapon was very useful. After that, the prota admits he may have found someone even crazier than himself. Later, he says she disappeared after dragging the leader away, with no joy and no real purpose left in her. Then she raised her hands to the sky and made a declaration, protect law and public order on the Korean server. Just like that, a civilian militia was born. Third session, day 28, 12:30 a.m. 2 days had passed since the big conference. The raid on the 5th floor was supposed to continue right away. But the prota put that aside and helped build the civilian militia. Many victims joined and became members. Some had already decided to do that on the day of the conference. A few people still hated her methods, but a lot of players from normal and hard difficulty were inspired by her courage and joined anyway. She ends up becoming something like a Joan of Arc figure for them. The prota explains that the militia created rules and public order to protect challengers and secure their rights. It wasn't for the rankers clearing floors, it was for the weaker players on the lower floors. Their core rules were simple. First, no attacking each other. Second, no killing. Third, no stealing. Fourth, no violating another person's free will. A lot of people objected, especially because breaking those rules came with punishment under the militia's internal code. Even so, they ended up executing 3 more members of the representative confederation. The others were spared and kept under watch. The prota says he probably doesn't need to worry about a rebellion, considering the mental state they were left in. So in the end, everyone realized the newcomers needed guidance and clear rules. To prepare for the next wave of novices, they planned to hand out manuals through the community. By dawn the next day, things had finally settled down. The prota admits he hates this kind of hands-on work. It just doesn't suit him. The only place he really belongs is here, standing in front of the final boss gate on the 5th floor. His skill with sabers had improved, so he decided it was time to say goodbye to this floor. Even though he has some worries, he trusts his own ability and believes he can clear it. With that, he steps into the final boss room. A strong purple light shines at the center, and we finally see a monster that looks like a lizard man. Then a window appears saying the test will begin in 30 seconds. There's also a glass barrier between the prota and the creature, so this looks like a straight one-on-one fight. The prota starts wondering if that lizard man is stronger than a goblin horde big enough to fill a whole city. Then the 30 seconds end, the barrier shatters, and a message appears: defeat the warrior of black shadows. His name shows up right after, and that wraps up chapter 35, ending on a strong hook for what comes next. Because now it's our prota versus this buff lizard in a one-on-one. He immediately readies his sword and shield. At the same time, the lizard man lets out a sound and turns toward him. For a moment, the prota feels a little intimidated. One question hits him right away. Will the warrior of black shadows attack first? From the way the monster carries himself, the prota can tell this is no ordinary enemy. Just feeling his presence is enough to know that this is the first time he's faced an opponent this cautious. Even with all kinds of thoughts running through his head, he tells himself not to get too nervous. Then he makes an interesting point. They're standing face to face like this because their abilities are probably close to the same level. He says he can see the creature's face clearly now and it looks like stone. Still, he decides to test the monster's skill for himself. Now things are about to get serious, for real. The scene suddenly cuts to what looks like a waiting room on another floor, and we see a girl who had been talking with the prota through the community window. He tells her that Kirikiri recommended buying these items: a pistol, bug spray, smoke bombs, and a high-speed elixir. It's a lot, but he still tells her to buy all of it. She says that would use up all the points he sent her, and adds that the old man said not to depend too much on items. The Proto agrees but says the 5th floor boss seems much harder than he first expected. This little exchange doesn't explain much. We still don't know the girl's name or even what difficulty she chose, but it does suggest the Proto can send points to other players. That'll probably be explained later. For now, the story cuts back to his fight with the 5th floor boss. The Proto says that judging by the creature's expression, the lizard man is being extremely careful. That fighting stance gives him full defense. The Proto had heard lizard men are usually aggressive and prideful, so it feels strange seeing one focus this hard on defense. He also says this lizard man is known as a dark and terrifying one, an abnormal lizard man. Still, the Proto decides to test that idea. Then all of a sudden he starts understanding what the lizard man is saying. The creature is praising him, saying he's never seen such a strong human before, and the Proto remembers that on the last floor, the gods gave him the skill knowledge before the Tower of Babel, which lets him understand monsters and other beings. The lizard man goes on to say he can sense the Proto's strength just from his appearance and smell. He says it's an honor to fight him, and if he dies here, he'll have no regrets. Being defeated by a strong warrior like him would be an honor. The Proto can tell from his face that the creature actually seems happy. That also proves the knowledge before the Tower of Babel skill isn't just for translation. Then the lizard man notices that the Proto can understand his language, and that shocks him. He says it's a shame the Proto was born human, and in recognition of meeting someone so strong, the lizard man decides to give him 3 chances to attack first. Ho thanks her and gladly accepts, but in his head he knows the win won't mean much with defense and counters on his side. Then he activates his skills and decides to show what that careless offer will cost. Die. The protagonist rushes in instantly, planning to combo the lizard warrior with his Teleria wings and teleport emblem. Right as the wings were about to strike, that was me. She dodges by turning her body into black smoke. That catches Ho off guard. This skill isn't just unusual, it feels downright unfair. He quickly wonders if her reaction speed comes from an ability like his battle focus. The trident comes at him next, and he barely slips past it. That forces MC to open some distance. He realizes she really is holding back and keeping her word about letting him attack 3 times first. That's bad news. He never expected to face someone who could evade both his wings and his teleport. Then the lizard warrior says he's so strong she wants him as her husband. Wait, what? Seriously? Ho freezes, wondering if he heard that right, then figures out this lizard warrior is actually female. She gives him a very suggestive look and even lets out a little laugh. Yeah, no, that's not happening. He throws his sword at her and it passes through her smoke form. At the same time, he charges in, already expecting her to dodge like that. His plan is simple, use the longsword to create an opening. But she suddenly uses her trident to redirect his attack. No need to rush like that. Slow down. Man, this is getting weird. Then she swings her tail at him. Ho blocks it with his wings and slams her with his shield. Even while airborne, she tries to stab him again with the trident. He catches that strike with the shield too. The clash knocks both of them apart. Ho is breathing hard now and can't figure out what's going on. She took a direct hit to the head, yet still countered and hit him back at the same time. She touches the wound from the shield bash, and somehow looks like she enjoyed it. The protagonist just stares at her in shock. Then she suddenly calls out to him and says she finally found a strong male, after waiting so long. She even says that with him they might get past the whole different species problem. She's not sure if she can get pregnant, but wants to try. What kind of talk is that? A human with a lizard? Ho is so thrown off he starts wondering if his language skill is malfunctioning. But when he looks at her face, she introduces herself as Adulteru, says he can call her it, and asks for his name. With a cold answer, MC says he has no reason to share his name with a lizard. Then activates battle focus. She grips her trident tighter and asks why he's rejecting her. Ho answers honestly, what reason would he have not to? This lizard really thinks she can steal Kirakiri's spot. After hearing that, Idoltaru says he's gone too far, and that judging others by appearance is wrong. He finds that odd since he never mentioned her looks, though it seems even her own kind may not find her attractive. He forces himself to refocus before this nonsense throws him off anymore. Ho notes that Idaltair is nothing like the other lizard men. Her strength, speed, weapon skill, and especially her fighting style are completely different. Instead of rushing in wildly, she moves carefully and efficiently, dodges calmly, then counters the moment she sees an opening. Her reaction speed lets her avoid attacks cleanly, and she also has that smoke ability that turns her body intangible against physical hits. In short, it's basically like a Loja power. That's a little nod for One Piece fans. The protagonist keeps replaying the fight, searching for a way to beat her, until he decides that smoke skill has a weakness. It lasts a long time for such a short dodge. She avoided his thrown sword with it, but she still took the full shield hit, so she probably can't use it non-stop, just like Ho can't spam his teleport emblem. Now he has a plan. Force her to waste the smoke form on normal attacks, then finish her in one burst with teleport and the Talaria wings. Idaltair tells MC he's cruel, but if that's how he wants it, she'll use brute force to keep him by her side. Ho wonders if she's some kind of crazy character archetype and how many personalities she has packed into one body. Suddenly, Idaltair charges in. Furious, he immediately sees she's attacking blindly from anger, which is actually a gift for him. As she swings her trident, he feels the pressure behind it and knows he can't take that head on. So he activates battle focus again, and right when the trident reaches his shield, it pierces through and wounds his arm. But that was part of his plan from the start. Ho slashes off Idaltair's arm, but she refuses to go down from that alone. She lunges again, trying to bite him with her sharp teeth. As a last resort, he uses the teleport emblem to escape. A moment later, Idaltair feels Ho's follow-up strike. In a cold voice, he says that human or monster doesn't matter. If someone blocks his path, he'll kill them. The protagonist finds it strange that she didn't use her smoke form, but judging by the damage, she ended up taking even more instead. Idaltair calls him cruel again. She says he truly tried to kill her, and if she had reacted a little slower, he wouldn't have taken her arm, he would have taken her head. So now she says she won't see him as a partner anymore, but as an enemy she has to destroy. Right after that, her body starts to mutate, growing bigger and more muscular. Her size nearly doubles, tearing apart the clothes on her upper body. Things just got serious. Idaltair stomps the floor hard enough to split it open, and the whole hall shakes from her power. Ho quickly takes his fighting stance as she stomps toward him, but he manages to dodge. MC thinks she'll destroy the whole hall if this keeps up, and says she really does feel like a video game boss. At that same moment, she rushes him and throws a full-force punch. Ho tries to evade, but a pillar traps his movement. He wonders how long she can keep this form up. He's already used his teleport emblem a lot, and probably has only 2 charges left. With no other choice, he dodges at the last second, and her punch completely destroys the pillar. In that instant, he pulls his sword from storage and thrusts for her chest, but another punch comes flying in, and his wings barely block it. The impact is so strong that, for the first time, Ho truly feels he might die here. He lets out a shout, and when he lands, he admits that she's insanely strong. Idaltair asks if he came this far just to change his mind now, and the two keep staring each other down. Then Ho unexpectedly asks her for some time. Idaltair asks what he means by that. He says her confession came too suddenly and left him confused, so he needs a little time to think. Genius. In his head, the protagonist says that's the perfect line when rejecting someone on the spot is hard. He even remembers hearing it twice in college. Idaltair asks how much time he needs. Ho says just a moment will do. While she gives him that time, he pulls the trident out of his shield. He thinks she's totally insane and impossible to predict, which is why he's had to stay on guard the whole fight. And that excuse was just a trick to buy himself time. He even starts using healing potions from his inventory to recover and gain an edge while she waits. Then she innocently asks if he's finished thinking. Ho says he needs just a little longer to gather his thoughts, but he's not thinking about an answer. He's pulling out a giant sword to split Idaltair in two. Our protagonist closes his eyes and focuses. He says using his teleport emblem to attack is already hard enough, so he decides to combine it with Talaria's wings. Even so, he says he still has one more trick. By mixing the speed of his sword swing with the emblem, he can hit Idaltair in one burst and cut her down. With that, he launches his attack, Teleport Emblem. Our protagonist activates Talaria's wings. Then he rushes Idaltair in a furious assault. He lands a string of deadly blows in a row, badly injuring her. For a moment he thinks the fight is over, but suddenly, Idaltair's tail grabs him. She drags him down with her, and he takes heavy damage too. The next moment, both are sprawled on the floor. Our protagonist tries to stand, but his body is in terrible shape. Then he looks over at Idaltair, lying there like she's been beaten. That makes him declare himself the winner, and say he somehow made it out alive. Still, his body barely moves, so he decides to head through the portal and recover in Kirikiri's room. Then something feels off. No clear message had appeared, and none of his wounds had healed on their own. That's when he realizes Idaltair is probably still alive. He turns and looks at her. She tells him he's cruel, and that instantly shocks him. Idaltair notices he can't move well, so instead of killing him, she says she'll make him her husband. He fires back that he'd rather die than become her partner. With just one arm, she uses the last of her strength to crawl toward him. He says he's badly hurt too, but he can still move a little. His teleport emblem is still on cooldown, but he can at least defend himself with Talaria's wings. Even then, he complains that if he still had the Glock he gave to Park, things would be very different. Idaltair keeps crawling closer, while he opens his inventory and finds something interesting, the heat stone. He wonders if it'll work. Lizardmen are reptiles, and reptiles are cold-blooded animals. So he grabs the heat stone and waits for the right moment. Meanwhile, she keeps coming, saying she'll make him her husband. Right when he's about to throw the heat stone at Idaltair, she gets close enough to strike him too. But then she suddenly lets out her last breath and collapses, completely out of strength. With her final words, she says he called her strong. He never called her disgusting or cowardly, and never cursed her as some devil's servant. He saw her for who she really was. To her, he's the other half she never found. Before dying, she tells him that even if he's a small, pathetic human, he's still a strong male, and one day she'll make him her husband. He says she finally died, but she still managed to scare him to the very end. Calling her an idiot, he starts wondering if her own kind looked down on her. With that strange ability and the normal defensive instincts of a lizardman gone, all that was left was a sad shell. He feels a little guilty, but even if her past was miserable, the two of them were always meant to kill each other. So he quietly says he's sorry for her and closes her eyes. A bunch of windows appear, congratulating him for clearing the 5th floor. His injuries and wounds are healed automatically, and then the gods choose to offer him a special skill. A new vote starts. 74 in favor, 3 against. He says the last skill the gods gave him was great, but ever since he started talking to monsters, it also made him question a lot. Still, refusing this new skill might hurt his relationship with the gods, so he really has no choice but to accept it. The moment he agrees, he receives the skill Summon the Fallen. He's stunned because this new power lets him use an item marked with the soul of someone dead to bring them back for a limited time. It's a god-given power with limits. He thinks it's amazing, so broken he can barely believe a skill like this exists. To him, it's basically a miracle. Suddenly, a strong light rises from Idol Teru's body. There's a soul stone over her soul. He thinks that if he revived her, she'd just keep talking about marriage and probably attack him again. So he says he's not crazy enough to dig his own grave. More messages from the gods pop up, and he wonders if ignoring this is really the right move. He looks at the portal and says those gods are insane. Then he steps through it. Back in Kirakiri's world, he finally looks relieved. Then she walks up to him and says, this time, breaking a woman's heart was especially cruel. He tells her to cut it out. Did she really want to see him mating with a lizard man? That makes her stammer and admit, probably not. And that wraps up chapter 39, ending at the 5th floor boss room and the portal our protagonist just came through. There's a window there, saying he'll need to form a party to challenge the 6th floor, and we see Ho with Kirakiri in her world. Since he promised before entering the 5th floor that he'd bring her cake when he came back, he keeps that promise and buys it for her. While they eat, Kirakiri says he's probably the first person ever to get courted by the guardian of the 5th floor. And yes, she means the way Idol Teru kept trying to force that whole marriage thing on him. After that, he asks her to forget it because there's something he wants to ask. He's been thinking about it for a long time, and the 5th floor only made him more sure. Before Ho can even ask, Kirakiri says no, she can't tell him. He wonders if she just read his mind. Even so, he keeps going. Goblins and lizardmen have their own cultures and societies. He doesn't know if these floors are another planet or another dimension, but he's sure they each have their own world. Or maybe they were made from worlds that already existed. If so, there could be other tutorials happening too, not just the one tied to his world. He adds that maybe the monsters that appeared in his world are Kirai. Kirakiri gives Ho a sharp look and he immediately backs off, telling her to forget it. He won't ask anymore. Once he says that, Kirakiri relaxes again. That only makes the whole thing feel even more suspicious. She warns him that he's just speaking his own guesses, but if he tries to pull answers from her reactions, she'll start acting differently too. He says he understands and realizes this already happened once before. Back then, Kirakiri didn't answer him either, but her expression changed completely. He keeps thinking about how she always gives him helpful information and decides taking advantage of her kindness would be wrong, so he apologizes to her. Some time passes, and the portal to the next floor opens. Kirakiri tells him to think about it a little more, and Ho asks if she's serious. She says, you never know. Idol Teru might make a good companion, if he can somehow persuade her. Anyone who felt bad about her death before probably got hit hard by that line. And of course, there's still a chance she shows up again later. He did just get that new skill from the last floor after all. But he quickly says he has no interest in talking to her, and calming her down would be impossible anyway. Then Ho walks toward the portal, saying there's no point trying to convince Idol Teru to become his ally. As he walks, he thinks about how badly he wants to replace his shield with a better one, but he doesn't have enough points. Kirakiri then tells him to buy more potions, since he doesn't want to revive Idol Teru to help him. He says he already has enough. She tells him she doesn't think so. That leaves him seriously thinking. In the end, he spends all his points on more potions. He says he's never regretted buying something Kirakiri recommended. Then the scene cuts to her saying goodbye, telling him to be careful and come back soon. Right after that, though, she admits she doubts he will. Ho starts wondering if the 6th floor is really that hard. He steps into the portal, saying the only way to know is to see it himself. The moment he gets teleported, a message pops up. It says he has to assign 4 more party members before entering the 6th floor. Ho thinks this is insane. They dropped that on him out of nowhere. Then he wonders where he'd even find people to team up with. He knows making a party with normal challengers would be almost impossible. The gap in skill is just too big. On top of that, he's the only one on Hell difficulty. And honestly, why is that his problem? Then Idol Teru comes to mind, and he wonders if he should bring her back. Yeah, no chance. Right after that, a message appears, saying the god of adventure is disappointed in him. Ho instantly tells that god to shut up, guessing he's probably just some creepy old man in a white robe. After blowing off steam, he pauses to think about what to do next. He looks at the portal message again, then he wonders if he can clear it alone. If so, he'd need to do the work of 5 people by himself. 5 Hell difficulty people. Now that's a real mess. Ho asks himself if he can actually pull it off alone. Even if there were other challengers on his difficulty, he doubts they'd match him. In fact, he's sure he'd be above average. One thing he definitely has is confidence. He remembers what the god of slowness told him, that he gained a special authority skill because of that god's traits. Without that, he never would have gotten it. So if his guess is right, the god of adventure gave him an authority too. Nervous after seeing the god of slowness hand one over first. He also admits that once he got used to his skills in battle, they never felt weak. If anything, he's gotten stronger in every way. Still, he can't help wondering if that really means he can do the work of 5 hell challengers. Then he decides there's one way to find out. Let's do it. So he chooses yes. A second later, he's sent to the 6th floor, with a superhero landing. Ho gets a welcome message for the 6th floor. After that, he checks the room and finds 2 portals. One is probably the way back to the waiting room. The other asks if he wants to take on the test of taunts. Ho remembers reading about a floor like this on the community boards. People said the whole area worked like one long trial. This place is called the bonfire room, a meeting spot where party members can gather and plan for the floor. It's also a safe zone, and the fire in the middle is magical. It never spreads, never goes out, and doesn't even make smoke. Once he's done checking the room, he walks to the challenge portal. Without hesitation, he decides to clear it alone. Then the scene shifts to a dungeon. Ho appears there a moment later. He says the floor looks a lot like the hallway from the 1st floor. But instead of a return portal, there's a stone door now. When he gets close, a message tells him he can't leave. Then something behind him grabs his attention. He turns around and realizes it's finally starting. An explanation for the floor appears. So here comes the story behind it. 50 years ago, the cursed priests of the Bahar Church were hunted by the Pantheon. That church was a cult that raised the dead and turned their souls into evil spirits. There were 16 priests, including Kadiyas. They escaped the Pantheon and fled to the center of the White Mountains. That place used to be called the New World because a god once lived there. Now the Bahar priests are trying to use leftover divine fragments to cover the whole continent in nightmares. So the system says a brave warrior must stop them until the Pantheon's holy knights arrive. That's the setup. Then another window appears with the clear conditions. In short, he has to stop the undead from reaching the stone door and kill all 16 priests. Ho says that depending on how many there are and how strong they are, this could turn into a long, brutal fight. Using his wings in such a tight space will be hard, but the narrow hallway also makes it easier to hold back a large group, so MC gets ready for the fight. 4 hours pass and still nothing happens. Then suddenly, the whole corridor starts to shake. When Hope looks ahead, he sees what looks like a massive horde of skeletons, so many that their march causes the tremors. He figures they aren't that strong one by one. If he fights smart and uses the corridor well, they won't be too dangerous. The real issue is how many there are. They just keep coming, maybe tens of thousands. And if those priests are necromancers, they're probably making more right now. So Hope he decides he'll wipe them out faster than the priest can replace them. Now he finally gets why Kirikiri said this time he'd take a long while to come back. He admits this is way beyond normal. He activates his wings and uses them to block the corridor, making sure nothing gets past him to the stone door. And that's when the fight really begins. Hope here opens by smashing one skeleton's head in. He quickly notices their weak point is the skull. Only crushing the head stops them for good. With that, he charges straight into the horde. One skeleton lunges, and he blocks it with his shield. Then he notices some of them are much better armed than the rest, so they're probably commanders. But all of a sudden, everything goes bad fast. He gets overwhelmed in an instant. Hope realizes he reacted too slowly, and then the whole swarm turns on him with a chilling stare. Yeah, this is bad. There's nowhere left to fall back. In the end, he's pushed all the way near the stone door. No matter how many he kills, they keep advancing. And even if he wants to go after the priests, he can't even see them from there. So after 2 straight days of fighting, his first attempt at the 6th floor finally fails. Right after that, we reach chapter 42, the point where a lot of people say the story starts getting confusing. So here's the quick version. From now on, the story starts showing parts of the present, where Ho is trapped on the 60th floor. The him we've been following until now is his past self, basically showing how he got there. Later we'll learn why he ended up stuck on the 60th floor. For now, the chapter opens on what looks like an egg. Then we see present day the protagonist in a room made to hatch it. He says everything is ready now, and if things keep going well, the dragon egg should hatch soon. He's already prepared for what comes after. First he'll soak the dragon in an elixir, then give it a blessing that grants several resistance skills. He also explains what the dragon will eat, and even if the dragon doesn't imprint on him at birth, he's already learned magic to fix that. So even if the baby dragon dislikes how he looks, it'll still treat him like its father. Then a call notification appears. When he answers, it's King in the present, calling to say goodbye before heading back to the real world. Ho jokes that he thought King would stay trapped there forever. Kim replies that he's getting out and plans to live a nice, peaceful life. MC laughs and says he doubts Kim will be running around talking about killing every monster on Earth. He also points out Kim was one of the Korean server's pioneers, and Korea has plenty of top-ranked awakened people. So if he stays in the country, he could probably make a fortune off his fame alone. Ho adds that if there happened to be a big conference today, they could even meet in person. Kim agrees but says he's tired of conference stuff. That surprises him, who says that aside from the rough start, the last one was actually pretty fun. He also mentions hearing that another big conference may happen soon. Kim is caught off guard and says he hadn't heard anything, since he'd been away from the militia for a while. Then he asks if Park knows about it. That makes the protagonist think of her, and he says maybe. Kim explains those conferences only happen when there's serious trouble with the tutorial. By now some information would already be leaking, and the militia would be moving, especially with Park being the type to cut problems off early. Ho jokes that maybe the next big conference will happen when she finishes the tutorial and returns to the real world. They both laugh. After talking for a while, Kim asks if MC is excited to meet the rookie now stuck on Hell difficulty's 6th floor. He says it's better not to expect too much. Others have made it that far too. Even so, Kim says the guy looks promising, and asks if he can clear the 6th floor. Ho says being an archer makes it tough, but with the right items maybe, with good gear someone can make it past the 10th floor, and if luck is on their side, maybe even reach the 30th, like those Americans did. Kim then asks how strong the protagonist is now. The protagonist wants to know why, and Kim says lots of people will ask about him once he gets out. So Kim suggests comparing MC to a G-rank monster. That leads into a quick rundown of monster ranks in the real world. They started with F through A, then added S, and later G. A G-rank monster is a national-level threat, and right now there are only 4 of them in the world. Once one claims a place, it never leaves. Ho says a G-rank monster named Oclera took over New York, forcing America into war with it. At the same time, major countries and top awakened fighters joined the battle. They did kill the monster, but the cost was huge. Half of the world's strongest awakened died. That's what he heard from newcomers entering the tutorial. The people who had been there from the start had never seen a monster like that, but from what he knows, he thinks he's insanely strong. After that, they keep talking for a long time, remembering how they met, the hard times and the good ones. Ho says he only saw Kim a few times during conference days, but those moments matter a lot to him after being alone in Hell difficulty for so long. The protagonist respects Kim deeply, and once Kim leaves, they won't even be able to talk or send messages anymore. To the protagonist, it feels like losing him for good. Then Kim says goodbye and tells MC he'll see him outside. He asks him to give everyone his regards, and the call ends. In the present, the protagonist sits there, deep in thought. His desk is covered with letters. One of them says something interesting. Ho had probably not seen her in years. The story shifts back to the past, with MC in the waiting room. This is right after he failed his first attempt at the 6th floor, and he calls it his first real defeat. He gets back up and says he has to keep moving forward, even if his chances are low. Ho says he had faced death many times since the 1st floor, but he had never felt defeat like this before. It reminds him of his old life as a pro gamer, when he retired right after losing. Back then, he lost at his peak. After coming to this world, he reached that peak again. That made him fear the same story was about to repeat itself. Because of that, he stands up and swears he won't let it happen again. And then we return to the point where Ho was sent back to the waiting room after failing the 6th floor. He felt like a complete failure for losing. We also learned that the newest arrivals brought fresh news from the outside world. One report said Chungcheong had been burned to ashes. Ho says the challengers were shocked by what the newcomers told them. Still, every other region besides Chungcheong was holding on, and Korea was doing fairly well. Defense lines had been set up north and south of Chungcheong to stop the monsters there from spreading. It wasn't enough to calm everyone, but if Korea was still standing, other countries were probably doing much worse. He also says chaos had started inside the tutorial. When the 4th session began, Park Jung-sik started a war against the former members of the Representatives Guild. After signs of their activity showed up again, the protagonist says he didn't think they'd try anything after the beating they took at the Great Conference. Still, all of this was already old news inside the community. Since MC had been stuck on that floor for a long time, these events had happened days earlier. He also says the civil militia's war against the old guild members ended quickly. From what he heard, 8 people died. On top of that, Park Jung-sik personally blew out the brains of 2 of them with her .38, the one Ho paid for. After that, people started seriously debating whether Park Jung-sik should keep leading the civil militia. The protagonist honestly thinks he can't tell if she'll become a ruthless killer or someone driven by justice alone. As long as she doesn't cross the line, he says he won't step in. And if things get bad enough, another great conference will probably happen. If that conference happens because of her, Holt says he'll do the same thing he did last time. He goes on to say Kim had been busy helping newcomers adjust fast. He even made a guide and shared it with the community. Kim also set up a gift and trade system through the auction window. If an item was listed for 7 or 77 points, it was meant for a specific person, so nobody else should bid on it. MC says the rule was simple, but it worked really well. Until then, the auction window had mostly been used by rankers selling junk to lower players for cheap. There weren't many items being traded, and since points were scarce, prices usually stayed low. He reflects on the difference between the two. While Park Jung-sik spread awareness about crimes, Kim worked to build a place where people could talk and live together. He wanted a real society inside the tutorial, no matter the cost. He remembers Kim once saying that instead of focusing on the few people who might reach the 100th floor, he cared more about the many stuck below. The protagonist says Kim wasn't wrong. More and more people were being left behind, and Kim's answer was to create a path for the weak. MC says he hadn't just been wasting time while trapped on the 6th floor. As soon as the 4th session started, new players arrived in hell difficulty. One of them picked it by mistake while drunk. The other just waved his hand, thinking the choice meant nothing. Just terrible luck all around. Seeing their choices, Ho remembers that his old teammates from the first session had chosen hell difficulty on purpose. Even then, he was the only one who survived, so he decided to help these newcomers and teach them everything he could. He explained what to avoid and gave them a rough growth guide. Then he told them to try challenging the first trap. Sometime later, one of the rookies contacts the protagonist and says he can't do it. The arrows are too fast to even see. He says he only survived because he accidentally fell. In the end, Ho says only one of them came back, and the survivor was in total mental collapse. MC says he expected that from the start. No matter how much he taught them, nothing would come from it. That leaves him wondering what it would actually take to save people in this difficulty. Kim was trying to pull challengers from the lower floors upward, but in hell difficulty, that was basically impossible. So he clears his head and says he has his own path to follow. He keeps thinking about how he's supposed to beat the 6th floor. Then while eating, he takes out some magic stones, the soul stones of Goblin Cractus, Goblin Goros, the Lizard Man, and Dauta. He figures that with Fallen summoning, he could call up 3 companions. He doesn't know if they'd really obey him after being revived, but if he can persuade them, it might work. That would let him form a team and split the fighting between them. They could take turns in battle to save stamina, and if things got dangerous, he could bring in another member. If a commander showed up, that extra fighter could focus on taking it down. Or all 4 of them could attack together and wipe everything out. Given how narrow the tunnel is, that plan could actually work. Ho says the skill is incredibly useful. It almost feels like the gods gave it to him for the 6th floor raid. Still, one part of the skill description worries him. The line about it only lasting for a limited time. He figures the fallen he summons will vanish after a set amount of time. With that in mind, he realizes more team-based floors will probably come later. So even if he clears this one now, he could just get stuck again on another floor. Because of that, he chooses to save this skill for the future. His new plan is simple. Become strong enough to do the job of 5 people by himself. Yeah, this guy is insane. He makes it clear he won't give up. No matter how many times he fails, he'll keep trying again and again. And with his masochism skill making him stronger, the more damage he takes, there should come a point where both his body and his power outgrow this floor. So he gets up, fully set on beating this floor, even if it takes months. And if he fails, he'll just return to the waiting room and try again. Right now, his only goal is to stay alive. With that, he steps into the floor once more and begins his endless climb for more power. He'll keep going until he can clear this floor alone. Filled with determination, Ho says he'll overcome whatever stands in his way. So the fight starts again, and our protagonist vows to show them a player's endurance and grit. At this point, his goal is locked in. The 4th session ends with the 6th floor raid and failure. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and a comment to support the channel. See you next time.